The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great. Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
You know, we've had some pretty interesting Friday shows in the past, but like Fridays before holiday breaks, like that, it can get really dicey today.
Who knows where this is going to go?
Yeah, I mean, we might talk more, Doug Gottlieb. I'm all about more Doug Gottlieb talk. We can maybe look at the next 10 games. Yeah, let's we'll look at the next 10 games for the Green Bay Phoenix and little over under. We'll just go win loss. Down the stretch. We'll see what happens. Get a little weird today on a Friday, but no, we got a lot to dive into here today. Again, by the way, welcome in. Sorry, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kenner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. And of course, we head into the weekend. College football playoffs. Ton to get into there. We're going to have Luke Brenneman join us here in just a few moments. He's about to hit the road to go cover Indiana and Notre Dame coming up later on tonight. One of 4 first-round college football playoff matchups this weekend, and a cool opportunity for Luke, so he'll join us here shortly as well. We had Jason Fitz on yesterday. He had some interesting things to say regarding the Bengals' approach to the offseason, but I'm here to say kind of a weird segment to plan whenever last night things got interesting. Yeah. We don't need to really look too far ahead to the postseason or to the offseason, because postseason play might be in play, right? Like, are you guys starting to feel a little better? Are you guys starting to buy in just a little more? Did last night make you scoot up in your seat just slightly more?
Yeah, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I don't think I could buy in anymore. I don't think there's any more ability to be bought in. I've talked myself completely into a one-game season against the Broncos because we're going to wipe the floor with the Browns. Chiefs will take care of business in Week 18. So it's one game to make the playoffs, and then who knows when Joe gets in.
Yeah, I would say.
What about Elliot? Elliot's the Michael Jordan of positivity. What do you got? Are you buying in, my friend? Are you buying in?
It is what they call me, isn't it?
Second most positive guy of all time.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm bought in, but it's a fun little time right now. You get a 2-week window to have the final weeks of the season matter. When a couple weeks ago I didn't think that was going to be the case.
That's really what we want.
Correct. It feels like the Reds. Yeah. It's like you want September to matter. I just want the last 3 games to matter. That's what I'm asking for right now. I'm not asking for the playoffs. I would love for that Week 18 game against the Steelers to have some sort of meaning. That's all I'm asking for now. That would be our playoff game. A sad playoff game.
Fair enough. The only thing the Bengals can control is just the games that they play moving forward. Obviously, Cleveland coming up on Sunday, and then a big one with Denver after last night's result. It sets up an even bigger showdown with the Broncos coming up a week from Sunday. And then, of course, you have the Steelers in the finale of the regular season, as you mentioned, Elliot. But we'll get to that coming up more in a bit. College football playoffs this weekend. We talked a lot about Ohio State and Tennessee yesterday, but the college football playoffs kick off tonight. A big one, Notre Dame, Indiana, and we're going to hang out with Luke Brenneman. Luke Brenneman before he hits the road to go cover Indiana and Notre Dame, of course, tonight. He's going to give us a little time. And Luke, welcome on, sir. How are you, buddy?
I'm great. Good to see you, Kenner. All the rest of you guys. I'm fired up to be on Off the Bench, and I'm fired up for today. This is, that only Friday game, and obviously it kicks off this year's college football playoff, but it kicks off the expanded college football playoff, and it's not just expansion. We're getting our first ever look at home games in the opening round of a college football playoff. We're getting a college game day set in South Bend, so tonight, this entire weekend, flooded with good sports, and I would make the argument that a ton of people are going to be in deep on this Indiana Notre Dame game. Just maybe not just because, especially around here, not too many fans, but Notre Dame, obviously, long-reaching alumni football school, Notre Dame Stadium, one of the meccas of college football, and it's supposed to be sub 20 degrees, some chance of snow off the lakefront, so all kinds of December football conditions tonight. I'm looking forward to it, but happy to be on with you guys this morning.
Now, look, you're a sophomore at Indiana right now, and I think when you're going to be working in their media department, you're probably thinking, man, Indiana, a basketball school, football's going to be fun, Big Ten team, you get to see some Big Ten games throughout the season, but hey, it's about basketball, right? I mean, are you surprised that right now you're as locked in with this football team right now. I think a lot of people are shocked. I don't think anyone thought back in July and August heading into this 2024 college football season that we'd be talking about the Hoosiers in the playoff. But that's how it's kind of lined up at this point. I know you, again, basketball school, but how surprised are you that we're talking so much about Indiana football this season?
I think it's everything. I mean, I took this job coming off of a freshman year, doing a lot of play-by-play, a lot of student radio. And it's like, do I want to be a beat reporter? If I do, what sport should I do it? I shoot out an application. I say, I want to cover the football team. I've always been a huge football fan. And I get it back, and I got it. And I was stoked as a sophomore to get kind of one of the bigger sports, obviously the biggest sport when it comes to a moneymaker inside of the Big Ten. But it isn't the biggest sport at Indiana. This is a team that went 3-9 last year, a team with a first-year head coach coming in town, picked 17th of 18 in the expanded Big Ten. So if that doesn't really prove what I'm thinking with my personal journey for selfish reasons to the point of that I'll have a credential around my neck going into Notre Dame Stadium, I mean, it's a blessing. It's a dream come true. And it's kind of been hard to not be a fan. You know, you cover the team. You're not technically supposed to be a fan. At the end of the day, I'm a student. So I care about this Indiana football team. But the storyline is so much more than just an Indiana perspective. I mean, what Curt Cignetti has done in what some people consider the premier conference of college football. This is a team who had an over-under win total of 5.5, and they have a chance to make it to what would that be? The final 8 with a win tonight. I mean, this is pretty much as good as it gets, and it has a chance to somehow get better if they can shock the world tonight.
How much is added to this matchup being an in-state matchup? Obviously, we all wanted to avoid conference matchups in the first round, but I think this has added a ton to it being an in-state matchup between Indiana and Notre Dame.
It's everything. I mean, I think it's a state championship. No one's really talking about that, and it is like the perfect state championship in the sense of South Bend is all the way at the top of the state. You're getting kind of that lakefront cold, that wind. Indiana tucked away in that bottom corner, kind of close to Louisville. So you're getting that north and south whole dynamic, 2 in-state teams that with Notre Dame not playing in a conference, these two schools don't play each other very often. And it was always one of those situations where it's like Notre Dame fans are like, all right, Indiana, you guys can have basketball. We're going to stick with our traditions and touchdown Jesus and be the football state in the school. Then Indiana all of a sudden is saying, hey, we might just be moving into a new era here. And the fact that after having a year like they have had this season, they're going to square off in an Indiana v. Indiana game. And it's so cool how it's at a home field. I know that the Hoosiers are certainly at a disadvantage playing in one of the toughest atmospheres in all of college football. But it is good that there are home games. I think the seeding is absolutely fair in this game in specific. There's certainly seeding issues all over the place. But Notre Dame, the one loss to NIU, and they dominate everyone else. Indiana dominates, but their one loss is to an Ohio State team. And the Hoosiers looked really rough in that one. So I do think this is a fair matchup. I think this is a good draw for both teams. And what no one has really been talking about is that Carson Beck is not going to play in the second round of the college football playoff. That game will be at a neutral site in New Orleans, but that is the Georgia Bulldogs, the SEC champions, with their bye without their starting quarterback, waiting for the winner of this game to go to the Final Four. So that's something that is certainly added motivation to win this game if there could possibly be any more.
Indiana's been dominant this year. There's no way around it. One of the biggest margin of victories in the entire country. But when they did take that one step up this year, you mentioned it, they looked pretty rough against Ohio State. What's the level of concern taking that step up again against Notre Dame? They haven't really been tested outside of that Ohio State loss.
Well, the level of concern comes from the mistakes that they made, because the thing that Indiana fans are continuing to draw back on, and that I was catching myself reminding a lot of people of when they were saying, like yourself, Jacob, Indiana should not make the college football playoff. This is not a top 12 team in the country. The mistakes that they made against Ohio State are mistakes that they have not made the entire season. A punt got returned to the house. A punt was dropped and recovered inside of the 3-yard line. There is 14 points directly off not just the special teams, the punting unit. Ohio State scored 38 points in that game, so it's not like you can just say, let's erase that. You obviously have to fix those errors. But then if it ends, it's a 24-15 game, and Indiana literally picked up 2 or 3 first downs in the entire second half. They were inside of their own end zone for what felt the entire third quarter, and you have to credit Ohio State for that, and you have to scrutinize Indiana. They didn't show up in that game. Curt Cignetti said they went to a silent count. He said that's something that he plans on never doing again. And people questioned that a lot at press conferences this week. You don't think Notre Dame's going to be just as loud? You don't think that's going to be difficult outside with the wind swirling everywhere, potentially snow? He said, I have a Canadian quarterback. Bring on the snow. Let's bring on the elements, and let's go play football. They said they messed around too much at Ohio State, tried to be too specific. This is a team that ranks first in offensive efficiency in college football. They're going up against a defense that's first in offensive or defensive efficiency, excuse me. So a statistical matchup all over the place. Both these defenses averaging sub 4.5 yards per play. I mean, this is like this right here. And I think Notre Dame's getting that 7-point edge because, yes, they expected to be here at the start of the season. This is a Marcus Freeman team that said, we want to go win a national championship. I think this was a Curt Cignetti team that he might have told you, and he might have told the media that he was going to, play for a state or a national championship. But what this has really ballooned into is bigger than the Indiana Hoosiers, and I think that just could be another reason that they show up tonight and continue to surprise people. Because if you have an offense and you can score, you can play with anybody, and this is one of the best and free-flowing offenses in the country when they get it going on.
Luke, appreciate your time. Send us out with this. Look, March Madness, it's all about the upsets, right? That's what makes March Madness so fun. Obviously, a little less teams in this 12-team playoff than the NCAA tournament for basketball. But, upsets are a big part of March Madness. Upsets, do you envision that being a big part of this potential playoff this year? I like Clemson over Texas as a potential upset there. Ohio State and Tennessee so tightly matched that I don't think there's an upset brewing right there by any means. I don't think anyone will view Tennessee winning as an upset or anything along those lines. But Indiana, Notre Dame, do you see an upset brewing in any of these matchups here in this first round?
I certainly don't see an upset in the Texas or Ohio State games. I think that people are trying to write this narrative that Clemson snuck into the college football playoff. They are 12-point underdogs in this game for a reason. Texas has one of the best defenses in the country. They have one of the best rosters in the country. So I don't see it in that game at all. I think Texas is a national championship contender, and Clemson's just a team that's lucky to somehow be in this playoff. And you got to credit them. They won the ACC. Then moving on, Ohio State, Tennessee. Kinner, you know the Buckeyes. I think that whenever Ohio State loses the game, it's considered an upset. Just because of their fan base, the added pressure on Ryan Day kind of enhances that claim a little more in this one. They're 7.5-point favorites at home in one of the hardest places to play in college football. They're coming off a home loss to Michigan. This game is everything for Ohio State. Obviously, it's win or go home, so it's everything for everybody. But in this situation, I think the Buckeyes and Longhorns roll. The other two games are the only games I would consider an upset in. I still think Penn State's really good, but SMU can score. So I will say that is probably the most probable upset in my opinion, even though that's an 8.5-point spread compared to a 7-point spread tonight in South Bend. The only thing that makes me worried about the Irish is just how physical this team is. I know everyone wants to look back at the NIU loss, but ladies and gentlemen, this is why the College Football Playoff Committee expanded the playoff, because they know teams sometimes, for whatever reason, just don't show up. They don't have good weeks. You catch them at the wrong time. And that's what happened with Northern Illinois and Notre Dame. And I think Notre Dame this entire season, starting on the road at Texas A&M in week 1, has been a national championship type of team. And it's going to take a national championship type of team to beat them. Is Indiana there already? Boy, what a story that would be on the road in South Bend with a sea of red in the crowd is what Curt Cignetti is looking for.
Indiana, Notre Dame tonight, 8 o'clock the kickoff, and Luke's about to head there now. Luke Brenneman, again, appreciate you. And, of course, you can catch Luke with Tom Brenneman dialed in each and every week. So, Luke, appreciate you. Safe travels. Enjoy the game tonight.
Thanks, guys. Have a good show. I appreciate it. Good to see you.
All right, good stuff there. Again, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kenner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. We'll be right back. More Off the Bench next. All right, happy Friday. We welcome you back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. We got Casey McAllister in the producer chair. Shout out Luke Brenneman. He's about to hit the road to go cover Indiana Notre Dame. It's the first playoff matchup of the inaugural 12-team college football playoff, which officially kicks off tonight. Indiana Notre Dame tonight, and then, of course, you have Texas, getting set to take on Clemson. You have Penn State and SMU, and then, of course, Ohio State and Tennessee. 4 big playoff matchups this weekend. Look, I asked about the upsets. Texas, a lot of people so high on them because, of course, their defense, obviously. But at this point, it's just, okay, even if they get a little resistance. We've seen Georgia put up points on that Texas defense. If Klubnik and that Clemson offense starts to roll offensively, is Quinn Ewers good enough to keep them in that game? I know he's good enough. We've seen it in the past, but he hasn't been good enough over the last month and a half, 2 months, ever since that injury. That's the reason I feel like that could be a potential upset there. Are there any potential upsets that you guys see in this first round?
I was on. I know I would go against our guy Luke there, but I was kind of on Clemson over Texas. I think Texas, though, has a solid roster as a whole. I do think their one weak spot is their quarterback, and I think that if Clemson's able to capitalize on that early, if he's able to make a couple mistakes early like SMU did, and they can jump out to that 14-0 lead, 21-7 lead, then I think there's a little bit of hope for Clemson. Outside of that, I don't think there's going to be an upset in Happy Valley. I don't think Ohio State's going to lose to Tennessee, and I don't think Notre Dame is going to lose at home to Indiana. I have a hard time believing that's going to be the case.
My most likely upset, and I think it's a pretty big drop-off to the second one, it's Tennessee beating Ohio State, and it has nothing to do with the play on the field for the Buckeyes. I think they're the better team at basically every single position, but it's the question I asked Jason Fitz yesterday, and he said that the coaches and players aren't as mentally, worried about the Michigan loss as fans are, but the more and more quotes and stuff I see from Ryan Day and Will Howard and then the seniors after the game crying on the field, I just don't know how much I believe that. And if Ohio State is mentally defeated and they're not locked in on this game and they're still thinking about that Michigan loss, then I think Tennessee can take advantage because that defense is really good. And Dylan Sampson is one of the best running backs in the entire country. I know Nico Iamaleava hasn't been what a lot of people thought he was going to be this year, but he's certainly better than Michigan's quarterback. And Tennessee has a lot of the same strengths Michigan has. And if they can if they can control the game against Ohio State in the trenches on offense and defense, I think that could be a problem for Ohio State. Ohio State's more talented on the perimeter. They're more talented at basically every single position. Tennessee has struggled on the road all year this year. But if Ohio State's not mentally in it, Tennessee's going to win that game, and I think that's the biggest risk going into the weekend.
Yeah, and the thing about Indiana Notre Dame, everyone's like, okay, it's for sure going to be Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's going to win that football game, but at the same time, Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame have had a habit in his early going as head coach at Notre Dame of losing games that they shouldn't. Now, they've won some big games this year. I think their schedule looked much tougher coming into the season than what it ended up being as the season kind of progressed, but they dominated teams all season. My thing is this, look, they lost to Northern Illinois. No one expected that to happen. Can we say that it's a for sure lock that Notre Dame wins this football game? They're at home, under the lights. There's a lot of hype building up for this game, of course. But Indiana, they're going there with house money. No one's expecting them to win. So if they go in there and they play, they lose, they're supposed to lose. If they go in there and win, that's going to be a great story. Notre Dame, it's not house money. They have to win. If they lose, now we're talking about Marcus Freeman in that same category of obviously you look at James Franklin at Penn State and really the corner that Ryan Day's backed himself into of not being able to win big games. So I like the spreads are interesting this weekend, but the storylines are writing themselves as well. I look at Ohio State. I expect them to win. I expect Notre Dame to win. I expect Penn State to win. But we're also talking about 3 coaches that also have blemishes on their resumes and being, marked as guys who always seem to consistently lose the biggest games that they coach and play in. So that's going to be the big thing right there. What's the likelihood that Ryan Day, James Franklin, and Marcus Freeman, who all have similar narratives about them, all come out unscathed after the first round? I don't know. That's going to be interesting. None of those guys should lose, but that's the whole reason the narrative about them exists. They keep losing games that they shouldn't or not winning games that they should. That's what's going to be exciting about that. But we'll give our predictions for the first round of playoff matchups coming up later on in the show. I know we got some sports headlines that we'll get to shortly, but I think we put it off into the show long enough because a lot of Bengals fans seem to be a little bit more invested now. Last night's Thursday night football game was supposed to be the Browns and the Bengals, and for the fact that they got flexed out of that, for the fact that the Bengals didn't play last night, there's a lot of Bengals talk on national sports talk this morning and local, because all of a sudden the playoff chances are significantly higher now. Well, I shouldn't say significantly, but the probability seems a little bit more in favor of the Bengals to make the postseason. I know we lightly touched on it to open the show, but we buying back in the likelihood of this happening. It seems like there's a very good chance the Bengals could play themselves back into the playoff picture if they're not already there now.
They at least have a chance to control their own destiny to play meaningful football until the end of the year, which is a pretty good spot to be in after the way the seasons went so far. I don't think a lot of people thought we'd get to this position, and last night was a pretty significant jump in the Bengals' playoff chances, operating with the assumption that the Bengals win out, because we know that they have to do that to have any kind of chance. A Broncos win with the Bengals winning out had the Bengals at a 7% chance. With the Chargers winning, they're up to a 33% chance with winning out to make the playoffs. If the Colts lose this weekend to the Titans and the Niners beat the Dolphins, that's up to a 58% chance if you win out to make the playoffs. We're over a coin flip with two outcomes this weekend that aren't much of a stretch. The Niners are a point favorite.
Yeah, I do think the Bengals have a significant chance after last night. But again, it's hard for me to buy back in. You're assuming they beat the Broncos and the Steelers. They have yet to beat a team with a winning record this season. They haven't beaten a good team. Every single one of their 6 wins has been, respectfully, a garbage team. They've been teams that aren't even close to contention. And in a league this year where we've seen more bad teams than maybe ever. I don't know if I remember an NFL season
it's pretty
where
bad.
there's been this many truly awful NFL teams. To be fair to the Bengals, you beat most of them. I mean, you beat most of the bad teams on your schedule. The one at the very beginning of your season is going to end up costing you. But if you would have won that game and you take care of the Broncos and the Browns and the Steelers, you're a playoff team. If you would have done your job, you would have been a playoff team. But the Bengals didn't do that. Now you have to bank on other people, other teams. I think there's a real chance that the Colts do not win out. I know people say, oh, the Colts have an easier schedule. The Colts have this thing similarly to the Bengals, maybe even the Reds. Towards the end of the season, the Colts, they usually lose a game or two.
They find a way to miss the playoffs.
Yeah, it's like last year. It was the fumble, or was it the drop? It was a drop.
It was the
right?
drop. Yeah.
It was a wide open catch for a first down. Didn't get it. Dropped it. Lose the game. Missed the postseason. I do think there's going to be some sort of magic against the Colts heading down the stretch, and the Bengals take advantage of that. I don't think the Miami Dolphins are good at all. I don't know what's going on with Tyreek Hill. I don't know what's going on with Tua. I don't understand that roster. And the fact that they're even talks about them making the postseason is crazy, because I just don't think that team had it from the jump this season. I know they lost their quarterback for a long stretch there, but I just don't see it. And outside of that, it comes down to that final week, Broncos versus Chiefs. You need the Texans or the Steelers to take care of the Chiefs. As long as one of those two happens, because the Bills aren't going to lose out. They're not going to lose a game the rest of the way down the stretch here. If you're able to have the Chiefs beat the Broncos in that final week, as long as they're playing for something, then the Bengals will at least be playing for their season Week 18 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it would be interesting to see what they do. There's a lot that has to happen here. I know for our direct scenario, it's the Colts, it's the Dolphins, and the Broncos. But you also need the Steelers to win out down the stretch. You need then the Chiefs to at least lose one of the next two, so they're playing for something in their final game. So there's a lot of different scenarios right now. And the craziest part of it all is the Bengals just have to take care of their own business. You just have to win against the Browns. I'd like it to be an easy win. I'd like them to just take care of the Browns so I don't have to worry about it after halftime, let's say. But I know better than that. It's going to be close, and it's going to come down to the wire. So I'm not bought back in completely, but there is hope. I mean, there is a glimmer of light for sure.
Yeah, if the Steelers win these next 2 games, it helps us more than we even know. Because they would clinch if they beat the Ravens and therefore not play starters in Week 18, clinch the AFC North. And if they beat the Chiefs, then the Chiefs would have to play starters in Week 18. So as weird as it sounds and as much as I hate it, we're Steelers fans for the next 2 weeks as well.
So it's interesting because you look at the narrative for the Bengals season this year is like nothing has gone right. That literally nothing has fallen in place for the Bengals at all. And I actually think it's the opposite. I think so much has fallen in place for the Bengals, and that's what has made it frustrating that this team has not been able to capitalize on that. And what I mean by that is, like, you look at the fact that you come into this season for the first time with Joe Burrow being healthy for a full, preseason, for a full camp. You have a last place, schedule. We thought all 4 AFC North teams are going to be competing for the playoffs, and then the Browns end up being as bad as the Bengals have been. The Browns have been significantly worse. The Ravens have not been as dominant, although, again, 2 wins over the Bengals. The Ravens haven't been as untouchable as what you like to think. The AFC is not as strong as what you would like to think. There's so many things that have actually fallen into place that the Bengals, if they played up to expectations, all of this should have just been dominating the National Football League. Things have fallen into place for the Bengals all season. They just haven't been able to capitalize on it. This is another opportunity that things have technically fallen into place for them to capitalize on when you think about the circumstances. The fact that the Colts and the Dolphins are vulnerable, that they're not, untouchable right now. And they, of course, when you look at the playoff scenarios for what has to go right, the Colts have to lose at least one more. The Dolphins have to lose one more. That is in favor of the Bengals. That is very much a possibility. The fact that you now get to control your own destiny. You play a very, very bad Browns team. You have the Broncos coming up. You control giving them another loss on the season. Plus, they end the season against the Kansas City Chiefs. You could not ask for a more tougher opponent for the Broncos to close it out against. And then you play Pittsburgh, which may sound tough, yes, because the fact that you haven't beat a team over 500 all year, but they're most likely going to be resting starters in that final week of the regular season. As negative as it's easy to be when it comes to how bad this season has been, this is another door that's been cracked open for the Bengals as far as opportunities to get back into the playoff picture, because they've, as bad as they've been all year, they have never been buried. And right now, they're still not even close to being buried. They still have a shot, and they haven't been able to capitalize on opportunities all season. They have another opportunity here. It'll be interesting to see if this is they have one more big swing left in them. Can they capitalize on it? Obviously, they just got to take care of business and win their final 3 games.
They should be. They should be dead. They should be buried. They should be buried. 6-8. It's been a horrible season. And I'm going to go against you a little bit because I do think nothing has gone right. You look at that Chiefs game, and whether or not you want to say that's pass interference or not, it was one call that decided the outcome of a football game, and that just can't happen. But it does consistently in the NFL, and that's unfortunately what happens. The Ravens game, you get the lucky fumble. You think it bounces your way. What happens on the hold? What happens on the snap? He muffs it. You lose to the Ravens. It comes down to the Ravens the second time. You have a big lead. You lose the lead. It comes down to a 2-point conversion. 3 different penalties on that 2-point play. None of them called. Bengals lose. And again, you can't really put all this on one play per game. You lose the games because of this absolutely disgusting defense. But you can look at a bunch of games, the Chargers. You look at a bunch of games this season, and it just hasn't gone the Bengals' way at any point during this season. The first time it went the Bengals' way this season was 2 weeks ago. And outside of that, I don't think the Bengals have had any luck. You need a little bit of luck. The Chiefs have had, and I can't say anything about the Chiefs because all they do is win. Every single game they've played, they've been lucky. Every single game they've had that luck, the luck factor. And eventually luck does run out. That's what happened in 2021. Luck eventually finds you, and it quits. So maybe that'll happen with the Chiefs. I don't know. But in counterpart there, I do think luck is going to find the Bengals eventually, because you can't play an entire season without getting lucky once.
All right, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Jason Fitz with Yahoo Sports covers NFL college football for Yahoo Sports. He joined us yesterday. He had some interesting takeaways regarding the Bengals' approach to the upcoming offseason. When you look at how many holes that they have to fill, we'll have that clip for you coming up on the other side. Off the Bench, more next. Casey, you don't follow directions. It's supposed to go to you.
What do you
It's
mean
supposed to go to
me?
you.
Okay. All right. I'll defend Kenner. I'll defend his take. I think everything
What was my take?
outside.
What was my
So
take?
you just said that a lot of things have gone the Bengals' way, and I think I want to rephrase it or retool it a little bit here. I think everything outside the Bengals' control has helped them in some way so far to this point. We've had the losses that we need. They're still in it, right? I think that the teams that, that they are going to have to play are good matchups if they do make it to the playoffs. I don't know. I just think, yes, Elliot's right. There's been a lot that has not gone the Bengals' way, but a lot of those have been in the Bengals' control, and they've just fumbled the ball, or they've, I'll give you the Chiefs one because that's not really in their control. But other than that, a lot of them have just been player mistakes. So to me, I do think that there is a little truth in it. I don't know if it's completely true because they're 6-8. I mean, not everything has gone their way, but everything that's been out of their control has helped them in some way get to this point.
They've probably gotten about as much external help as you can ask for a 6-8 team.
Yeah.
But I mean,
the fact that we are still alive with a feasible playoff scenario with how this has gone is insane.
Yeah, I mean, you could say there's a little bit of luck in the fact that every team has been terrible.
Yeah,
but
I think that's pretty lucky.
Yeah. But
I think.
But I don't know if I constitute that one as luck. I don't know if that's luck to me.
In a normal season, the 6-8 Bengals have been eliminated long ago.
Sure, that's fair.
Yeah. And we thought that the AFC was the best conference by far, and it's just been not even close.
Yeah.
So I do think that there's been some outside circumstances that have helped us get to this point. Now, I will agree that the season has not gone the Bengals' way, but that's mainly because of self-inflicting wounds. Like that's
No, it is, but it's like if you look at the injuries, if you look at everything that's gone wrong right from the jump, the Jamar Chase contract stuff, every little thing has trickled down to this disaster of a season.
But technically, how has that impacted the season? Because Jamar's had his best. I mean, he's arguably the best receiver in football. I know. And you're not wrong, Elliot. You are right. Like that put a bad tone on the season. It set the tone, if you will. I'm with you 1,000,000%. I guess I just don't see how that impacted the season in regards to where we're at right now.
Couldn't have been playing better.
Yeah,
type of thing.
You're not wrong, but I guess I'm just
Early in the season, he was not playing well though, and it took him, I think, 3 or 4 games for Jamar Chase to be the Jamar Chase we're seeing right now. I think that hurt the locker room. I think that hurt the spirit of the culture that we had here in Cincinnati.
But again, that's self-inflicted
sure, no,
wounds.
It 100% is. It's self-inflicted. The Bengals were in control of it, and they messed it up several times all throughout this season. They've done that. But usually with that, you get a lot of help along the way. You get something to fall your way. You get a bounce every here and then. And the bounces just haven't come, and we've been waiting for them.
They have now, though.
They have now.
That's what matters. Because if we get lucky now, imagine how long that lucky streak will last. Maybe it lasts far into the playoffs. Who knows? I would rather be lucky now than be lucky early on in the season and then lose it.
But if we were lucky early on in the season, we wouldn't need the luck now because we'd have like a 95% chance to make the playoffs if we just beat the Chargers.
Fair.
All we had to do is beat the Chargers.
If we beat either the Chargers or
Patriots.
either of the Ravens games, not even counting the Patriots game, if we had beaten the Chargers or won either of the Ravens games, we would have been up above 70%. The Chargers game would have had us around 80%.
Yeah, and
just little moments like that have just killed us.
And like the positive side too, like if you would have told me back in July and early August that the Jets would be putrid, and I know you guys aren't big on the Browns, and that's fine. But look, I don't think you guys were very high on the Browns, but I don't even think you could have told me that they were going to be 3-11 heading into the final couple weeks of the season. Like that, I mean, this is a team that had 5 different quarterbacks last year and still won 11 games and made the playoffs. Like I don't think anyone envisioned the Browns being that bad. I'm bringing these teams up because these are the teams that would normally be still fighting for those last couple playoff spots. The Dolphins are 6-8. You know, that team could have won anywhere between 9 to 10 games coming into the year. So the Dolphins being worse than anticipated, the Jets being horrible, the Browns being horrible, and let's add the Jaguars in there too. I may not be super high on Trevor Lawrence, but I know the guy is not a horrible quarterback, and I don't think anyone saw the Jacksonville Jaguars regressing as bad as what they did. they're bad. They're good. There's good players on that roster. They have just been absolutely horrible this year. So there was a lot of teams that took major steps back that should have made this much more simpler for the Bengals to capitalize on it. And because of that, that's why they still have a shot at this point. So that was the positive spin I was just trying to put on there. But can you imagine if the Jags, the Browns, the Jets, and Dolphins were all competing to the level that we anticipated coming in? Yeah, we would be talking all Reds right now. We would not even be mentioning the Bengals at this point. So that door's open. They just got to capitalize on it and take advantage of it. And luckily, you got a bad Browns team, a beatable Broncos team, and a Steelers team that is super banged up. Record-wise, yes, very good team record-wise, but that's not the same team that they were a couple weeks ago. This team's decimated by injury. So it's going to be a fun race to see what ends up happening. But as Elliot said, just get us to Week 18. Let's tune into that Bengals-Steelers game and just hope that there is something that, man, by the end of the day, we could be talking about the Bengals in the postseason when we get to Week 18.
Yeah, I watched last night's game, and man, it's just so disappointing because I don't think the Broncos are good. I think what Sean Payton has done this year there has been admirable. I think they had, coming into this year, one of the worst projected rosters, one of the worst projected win totals, and what they've been able to do has been incredible. Bo Nix was definitely the lowest of the quarterbacks coming into this year, right? Of the new draft, he's one of the lower ones.
Yeah, I mean, he was picked last.
I think there was not a ton of hope that he was going to be able to play well this season. He's been good. So credit to the Broncos, but I don't buy what they're selling me. I also don't buy what the Chargers are selling me. I think Jim Harbaugh is, again, a hell of a coach that's turned that franchise around in one season. But if I were the Bengals, I'd love to take another chance at the Chargers. I'd love to play the Denver Broncos. If I was a team in the playoffs, I would be begging to play the Chargers and the Broncos. I would not want to play the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't care what the record is. The Bengals could have a 4-win, 10-loss, 12-loss, 13-loss record, and no team in the NFL would still want to play us. Now, there was the scenario, though. There was the scenario that the Chiefs, no matter what, still take a dive that final week. I saw Andrew Whitworth last night on the broadcast was talking about it a little bit, that the Chiefs would still dive because they know they have one test in the NFL. There's one team that gives them problems in the playoffs, and it's the Cincinnati Bengals.
That is the wildest suggestion of all time. That
Yeah,
a team would give up a bye in the playoffs
just
to spite their rival.
I love it.
That's insane.
That's football, baby.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it does certainly help us. Obviously, it is looking ahead. The Bengals have a lot of business they have to take care of already, but the Chiefs and Bills play at the same time in Week 18 if there's no flexes. So the Chiefs won't be able to plan ahead if the Bills had lost or anything along those lines. They have to operate as if they have to win the game if they do pick up that loss beforehand at kickoff. So that does help the Bengals in that sense if we do get to that point.
You know, it's funny, the NFC for a while looked like it was like head and shoulders better than the AFC this year, but you start to look now that things are starting to settle. I mean, it looks like every team in the AFC that makes the playoffs is going to be at least a 10-win team. And I'm not saying that won't be the case in the NFC, but you look at, I mean, there's 8-6 Buccaneers, 8-6 Rams right now. The 8-6 Seahawks still in the mix to make the playoffs. Right now, everyone, I mean, you look at the fact that the Broncos, Chargers, and Ravens and Texans, all 9-win teams. You look at the Bills and the Chiefs and the Steelers, all at 10 wins right now. Cincinnati, they win now. Obviously, we're talking about a 9-win team at that point, so the bottom could fall out of the AFC there. But overall, the AFC has kind of picked it back up, and it's really because the Chargers and Broncos have started carrying it more in the middle there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. My thing when you get to the NFC is it's a fun comparison when you do the division champions, and even when you get to the back half of the wild card, it's a decent debate. But when you look at the wild card teams in the NFC, and you have 12-2 Minnesota and 10-4 Green Bay, it's just like, I mean, those two teams run laps around the teams we're discussing in the AFC right now, especially with how they're playing right now. Obviously, we're projecting the Bengals to win 5 in a row, and then if we want to talk about who would you rather play, then maybe we have that discussion. Yeah. But I think if you're talking about the Broncos, the Colts, the Dolphins, the Bengals, I'll even throw the Chargers in there. Those two wild card teams in the NFC, the Vikings and the Packers. And the Vikings might even win the North. If the Vikings win out, they win the North. And then we're talking about the Lions, who have basically all year been the consensus best team in the league, being the 5 seed in the NFC. So the top half of that NFC wildcard race is just so good that I think they take the cake this year, as much as it pains me to say it. But if I had to bet on it, and I definitely will, I think the AFC is going to have the Super Bowl champion.
All right, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wingham and Dayton. Let's get to that Jason Fitz soundbite real quick. We'll talk a little bit more Bengals on the other side when we come back. Plus, we'll get you our NFL picks heading into the weekend, predictions for college football, and then maybe sneak in some of Elliot's headlines because I might have a.
We can end the show with Elliot's headlines.
That's how we'll do it because I think we have the new audio. I think we have the new sounder. I think we might have.
No, we don't.
There's a chance. There's a chance.
There's a chance.
We'll be right back. There is a chance. We'll be. All right, and we are back. Justin Kenner, Casey McCollister, the producer chair, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Next week, holiday week. Do we even know the show schedule next week? What's everyone's plans next week? What are we all doing? What do you guys have planned? Are we doing a show next week? What we got going on?
It's supposed. By the way, it's snowing pretty hard right now.
It is. It's beautiful.
Beginning to feel like Christmas. We will have a show on Monday.
And then Kinner and I are going to backpack this sucker on Thursday.
I think that's what's going on.
I think that's it.
Probably going to talk no college football that day.
Yeah, I would imagine that it's going to be a quick touch and go on the NFL Christmas games and then just straight into the weekend's college football. So buckle in for that on Thursday.
How bad is the stream going to be on Christmas on Netflix?
Oh, I think it's going to be pretty bad.
I think it's going to be really bad. That's because that's significantly more cameras.
People.
Like
I know Tyson Paul was huge. It's not Chiefs, Steelers, Texans, Ravens huge. Like those are monumental games on Christmas Day. Like
how many people tuned into that Jake? How many people tuned into that Jake Paul fight?
Not as many as tuned into Antonio Brown's live stream. So
it was like a ridiculous number. Overall, like when you added it all up towards the end, I mean, it was a disaster.
65 million concurrent streamers.
Yeah.
That's
nuts. See, WWE's Monday Night Raw is moving to Netflix, I think, like starting in like early January. And I remember Paul Levesque, who's Triple H for you wrestling fans out there, he was asked about his thoughts of, are you concerned about all the lagging issues and buffering issues that happened with the Mike Tyson and the Jake Paul fight? And he said, listen, he goes, if we have that issue, that means we have 65 million people trying to tune in to watch our product. He goes, I guess that's a good problem to have. So I don't know about the NFL. Though. I don't know what kind of number would you expect for the NFL games on Christmas?
I don't know. It has to be an insane number, right?
I don't know. I don't know because I imagine a lot of people aren't going to have that on. Because I don't think they're going to go through the trouble on Christmas Day of finding it on Netflix. I think if it was not on Christmas Day, you'd have more viewers. You know
Raiders Chiefs last year on Christmas Day had 29.2 million viewers.
I bet it would be roughly the same.
But so that means the 2 games would have roughly the same amount of viewers as Jake Paul.
Oh, combined? Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Combined, yeah.
So I think they're going to be battling a similar thing.
When you're at your family Christmases and you're just hanging out for the day, like is the TV on in the background? Do you just have a game on in the background? Like I know we do.
I turn that sucker up, and I don't have to listen to my family.
So I go to 2 grandparents' house, and there is a 0.0% chance that they're going to be able to figure that out on their TVs.
That's what you're for.
Fair enough.
But I will have it. I will have it. Well, in one grandparent's house, they don't have the TV where everybody is in the main living room.
Well, why would you?
So they got it in the back room.
No, that's
so it would be a lot of work. What's gonna most likely happen is I'm gonna just have it on the old phone and we'll watch it there.
I love when older people do that. It's like, here's the room that we all hang out and then the TV's gonna be all the way back there.
Yeah, nobody's gonna be able to watch it.
We don't need to watch that.
They do have. It's funny. They have a TV, so they've got a TV in the main little space. The main space that they have it in seats 3 people. 3 people. The main living room area, no TVs. And then they've got a porch with a little tiny baby TV.
That's good.
And that's where we all end up going. We all squeeze our asses over there.
That's nice.
Into this porch area to watch TV outside.
We go.
It's very, very funny. And the other grandparent, they have music on the TV.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Do you know what
that
music
is? Choice on demand.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. So they won't watch actual television. They'll have just like it's like
naturally.
Frank Sinatra. It's Frank Sinatra's greatest hits on the TV.
That's tough.
My grandparents'
TV is about 6 feet thick. it has a contraption coming off the back of it that weighs no less than 400 pounds, and the picture is as many pixels as you are willing to count.
Damn.
You can see every single one individually.
My favorite channel is the Fireplace channel.
That's a good one.
You go to that channel and it's just the fire burning with some little, light ambiance in the background.
That's a good one. You gotta get a newer TV to really feel it.
Yeah.
But
by the way, you mentioned it's probably going to be on your phone, but like those views count just as much as whether it's on a small screen on your phone or a 75-inch TV. It all counts as the same view. So that's the perk with that. But no, we'll and I think the biggest thing too is, again, there's just a lot going on. I'm curious to see what that number will be.
Before I forget, we do have a super chat. We have a super chat, and I'm not going to forget it this time. This is from Justin Edgel, $1.99. He's off until January 6th. Hey, Merry Cronmas. Do I not get that one?
I think it's just another weed joke.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
Well, at first, I think January 6th. I don't think that was a weed joke.
Well, that's not, but Cronmas would be.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
What's significant about January 6th? Why would
I don't know, but I'm busy too.
Yeah, Jacob's busy on January 6th as well on that one.
Not again. All right, Off the Bench presented by.
Hey, let me in.
I was just walking my dog, and all of a sudden, all right, Jason Fitz, shout out to him for giving us some time yesterday. He talked Bengals, talked college football, talked the playoffs, talked everything. But he brought up a couple interesting things about the Cincinnati Bengals. I know people caught one point when he said the Bengals have been the biggest disaster in sports. I think there's a little. He was meaning to be a little aggressive there. I think there are horrific franchises out there. I think the Jets have been an absolute embarrassment. The Browns have embarrassed themselves. There's a lot worse franchises in the NFL than the Cincinnati Bengals. But I think what he's referring to is the fact that just with how much talent this team has, with all the expectations coming in, to fall so short of those expectations is what makes them as big of a disaster to this point as what they have been. So I was laughing at some of the takes that, people got offended by that. But overall, I understand where he's coming from. It's not a surprise that the Browns are bad. It's not a surprise that the Jets are bad. But when you have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and you have a defense that no one thought was a top 5 defense by any means, but to see how bad it got, I think there's so many things that did not go the way everyone had anticipated coming into the year. I don't blame him. But he talked about the fact that, okay, well, with how bad things are right now, there's so many question marks and so many holes that you have to fill to patch some of the issues with this team moving forward. Jacob and him discussed this on Off the Bench yesterday. Here's the clip, Jason Fitz, on the direction of the Cincinnati Bengals and how they have to address some of the issues on this roster moving forward.
I think they'll have to go all in. There's a ton of public pressure to do that. I do think this. I had somebody, I've always said this as a Raiders fan. My team stinks. And I look around and say, okay, ask yourself realistically, how many new starters do you need? How many guys on your team would be starting on a playoff caliber team, right? Kenner's heard me say this before. So, look at it and say, okay, in a dream world, if you're a Bengals fan and you're saying, God, we need, 8 new starters on the defensive side of the ball, 3 new on the offense. All right, so if you're looking at 11 or 12 starters, a Hall of Fame offseason, an absolute, oh my God, I cannot believe we did that offseason, will get you 4 or 5 new high-level starters at best. That's free agency and the draft combined. If you get 4 or 5 high-level impact guys out of an offseason, then you are talking about an all-time offseason. So if it looks like you need 12 new guys, talking about at least a 2-year rebuild. And that's just the logic side of all of this that nobody wants to hear. So I think you have to go all in. You have to cut some of these salaries. You have to accept who you are. And that's the hardest thing for every fan base to do. Accept who you are. Right now, the Bengals are a team that have a couple of really talented pieces and a bunch of bad. So if you're going to fix a bunch of bad, I think it's a 2-year offseason plan that gets you to where you want to be then. And that's a tough mountain to climb, because it wasn't that long ago that we all thought the Bengals were going to take down the Chiefs and Mahomes. Yeah. Now it looks like, to me, it's 2 off seasons to get back to even competitive with them. And that, to get competitive with the Bills and where they are, that's just – it's a large ask for Bengals fans. I would preach to you that whatever you think the solution is, if you think you need more than 5 or 6 new guys that are coming in day 1 next year and starting, then you need more than 1 offseason to do it.
One interesting takeaway there is when he said to get back to being competitive with the Chiefs and the Bills, and that they're years away from that. Keep in mind, I think that he doesn't mean competitive on the football field with them. We know the Bengals, were this close. Right. You brought up, they could beat the Chiefs, they could beat the Bills. But what he means by being competitive with them is you look at how the Chiefs they lose pieces and keep moving. The Bills, they lose Stephon Diggs, they lose key pieces on defense, and somehow they get better and keep moving along. What he means is as a whole, to compete with them, not just on the field. We know they can compete with them on the field, but to compete with them in the win-loss standings category, to consistently stay with them at the top of the standings. That's how far this team is off. There's a gap from that regards. Do I think there's a gap between their ability to compete with the Chiefs and the Bills on the field in a head-to-head matchup? Absolutely not. But to keep up with them, to be fighting for home field advantage, to be fighting for one of the top seeds in the playoffs, there's a gap there. But did 1 to 2 years? That sounds like a long time, even for football. Football, we see teams turn stuff around quickly. We watch the Bengals do it quickly. But 1 to 2 years seems like a long time to patch as many of these holes. Do you think there's 5 to 6 holes that this team could address all in one offseason, Jake?
I think there's way more than 5 to 6 holes, and that's why that quote didn't necessarily give me a ton of excitement going into next year. I've been saying 2-3 year rebuild to get back to a Super Bowl contender on paper for a while now. Hopefully year 1 just happened with this draft class. Amarius Mims looks great. Zach Taylor says they've seen enough out of Matt Lee that they're going to try him at guard some. That'd be great if he has position versatility. We saw what Eric Hall could do before he got hurt. It looks like this draft class has been pretty good, so hopefully that was year 1. But with all the holes that I've seen go on this team going into next season, if we can only replace a handful of them, my biggest concern is I think most of the biggest needs on this team are on the offensive side of the football.
Yeah.
I think if you let T. Higgins walk, wide receiver 2 is a top 5 need for this team to be relatively competitive next year. I think guard is a top 1 or 2 need going into next season. If you let Mike Gesicki walk, Eric Hall has a torn ACL. Tight end is a major need for this team. If you can only replace a handful of positions with starting level talent, I don't know how many of those options are on defense. Do you roll the dice on a healthy Dax Hill, DJ Turner at corner? Have you seen enough in the last couple weeks for Geno Stone to be a reasonable piece at safety going into week 1 next year? Logan Wilson healthy? Maybe you run the same linebackers back? I don't know. But to hear only a handful of positions can be expected to be fixed in the offseason, we all knew that. But when you really look at the numbers, I think most of the biggest needs for this team are on offense, which is as crazy to say after how this season has gone with the defense costing us the games. But I think guard and wide receiver might be 2 of the biggest needs going into this offseason.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too. You look at the deficiencies that exist on this team right now that has them at 6-8, still in position to make the playoffs, but it's not as if this exact roster will be taken into next offseason. So this roster that's taken into the offseason, people think, oh, what do you got to do to add to this current roster? Well, some of the biggest moves for this Bengals team before you even get to adding is retaining some of the guys that are a part of this 6-8 team at this point. Like a lot of the talking points are going to be about Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson has been lights out, no doubt about it, but he's also been lights out on one of the worst defenses in the NFL. And if you got to fork over a ton of money to keep him, and then you got to make Jamar Chase the highest paid wide receiver in football, and maybe kick the tires on another tag on T Higgins, or just outright lose him. Now you're you're just trying to address current pieces that have actually helped you be in position to still make the playoffs, not even address the holes that have kept you out of being in the playoffs at this point. There's a lot of holes that this team has to fix, and then it comes down to, and I know he brought up yesterday the fact that, they just need to go get a wide receiver in the draft. And it sounds so simple. Well, they technically tried to do that with Burton, and it's nothing is simple. At a certain point, yes, we could talk about the draft picks, but you got to be able to trust their ability to go and not just draft guys, but develop guys and continue filling holes and play whack-a-mole when it comes to improving the roster as the seasons progress. So, yes, I mean, this first offseason, a lot of the money that this Bengals team is going to have could just be forking it right over into a couple of players that are already on this roster before you even start to upgrade other positions. That's going to be the big thing moving forward.
That's why I think defensively you're going to have to operate in free agency, because that's when you can eliminate some of that risk, some of that swing and miss potential, because more or less what guys are. And I'm not even talking about the Sheldon Rankins and Geno Stones of this class. Go get guys that are more sure things. Even though those two guys were pieces that most Bengals fans were excited about going into the season, they were relative gambles. They certainly weren't the biggest pieces on the market, and I would like the Bengals, especially defensively, when we know we have holes, when we know we're trying to compete right now with an elite quarterback, put the money into that side of the ball. Take some swings on offense in the draft, because I think Joe Burrow can raise the floor of a lot of pieces on the offensive side of the football. I think defense needs a pretty serious talent infusion. So I would spend a lot of the money in free agency on the defense. You can get a lot more cap space, up over $100 million, if you cut a couple of the guys we've been talking about cutting for months now. So the Bengals have the funds to do it. They just have to be willing to spend it. And we've seen them not do that time and time again over all of history. And hopefully this year they make a change and commit to improving the roster. And I agree with Jason Fitz when he said that it's different now that they're invested in Burrow. He thinks they're going to go all in. I don't know if all in is the word I would use if you're talking about a league sense, but all in for the Bengals for sure. More than we've ever seen them do, I think will happen this offseason. At least I hope it does.
Elliot, Casey, I'll ask you guys this too. Obviously, making the playoffs, that'd be fantastic, no doubt about it. Considering, though, do you feel, and this might be a bad take from an outsider here, but I'm curious, would making the playoffs almost be a disservice to the team because of it would let the front office off the hook? Don't you feel like this team has to hit rock bottom to really get that urgency meter to reach the peak? Like, I feel like, I could be wrong here, but I feel like if they make the playoffs, and that's what you ultimately want, no doubt, but if they make the playoffs, and let's just say, heaven forbid, they upset a team in the first round of the playoffs and make a little run, could the front office sit back and just say, hey, we had a lot of things just not fall our way this year. We're going to make a couple changes, but we still feel pretty good about the core pieces we have. Like, I feel like it could almost bail them out if what you guys are pushing for ultimately happens. Sometimes it's like you have to have that the ground to fall out from underneath you. You have to hit rock bottom for them to say, okay, we have to make so many drastic changes. I feel like making the postseason almost works against you big picture when it comes to the urgency that they need to address a lot of these problems with.
Yeah, for me, I've been wishing against it since the moment they lost to the Chargers. Winning these games down the stretch, finishing this season 9-8 and not making the playoffs, that's the worst possible scenario.
Oh yeah,
that anybody could dream. It's great that they're going to fight. They're going to fight all the way to the finish. But if you want real change, they're not going to change if they make the playoffs. Because why would you? Why would we change? We made the playoffs. That's the job. That's the goal at the start of each season. I don't think you're going to see what you want as Bengals fans, whether that be Lou Anarumo get fired, whether that be Zach Taylor get fired, whether that be Duke Tobin get fired, whether or not they sign solid free agents, draft well. I don't think you're going to get the organizational change that you want if they make the postseason. And obviously, as a Bengals fan who doesn't believe in the organization to pretty much do anything right, I would probably just take the playoffs and take our chance. But it is kind of a win-win here, because I think there's a chance that unless they go 9-8 can't happen. If they go 8-9, fine. 9-8 legitimately would upset me because that's just another knock. It's Zach Taylor doesn't lose seasons, another 9-8 year. That would infuriate me. But if they have an 8-9 season, I think you're going to see real organizational change because this has been an utter disaster. It's been a complete failure from the jump this season. You mentioned the expectations. We have to talk about expectations because in the NFL, when you have a top 5 quarterback, you have the expectation to compete for a Super Bowl. The Bengals at no point, at 0 points during this season, were a Super Bowl contender, and that's a joke. That's not okay. So yeah, I am nervous. I am nervous if they make the playoffs that we're just gonna run it back. We're gonna try to do it again. And it just can't happen like that. Good organizations don't operate that way.
Casey will tag you in here too. Like, again, it's not that you're rooting for your team not to make the playoffs, but again, you make the playoffs, you get that first round exit. It's like, great, you got to taste that playoff experience again after not making it last year. But do you fear that this organization looks at a playoff appearance and says, see, we're not that far off. We don't need to overreact and panic. We just need to make a couple moves. We don't need to overhaul too many aspects of this. Are you concerned that a playoff appearance could potentially create less urgency for the front office to act with moving forward?
I mean, Kenner, they were not panicking at 4-8. They were not.
They like what's in the locker room.
Yeah, they like what's in the locker room at 4-8. So, I mean, I think it would be bad. Yes, it would stink from a perspective of nothing's going to change at 9-8. But at the same time, you got to look at, from their perspective, they are one fumbled snap from winning against Baltimore, 1 2-point conversion from beating Baltimore, a penalty against the Chiefs,
kick against the Chargers,
a kick against the Chargers. There's 4 games right there that I just listed that changes this season from if they finish 9-8 and win a wild card, to being one of the top seeds in the AFC. So I don't know. I think like part of it could be a little bit of an overreaction. I think the defense atrocious. And when we go back to that clip of Fitz saying how many holes we have on this team, I think they're going to look at this roster and say that there's not that many holes to fill. I think they're going to say there's probably a safety, there's probably a defensive tackle, and maybe a guard. And if they don't keep T, then receiver. So there's probably 4 holes. So they probably are looking at this season going, we don't have that many holes to fill. And that's why when we had that conversation back in the midway point, when we were talking about the trade deadline, is this team one guy away or are we multiple guys away? I was more leaning towards like they're one really good guy away on defense from completely changing the look, right? I think the obvious thing that you can look at, like pressures, they suck at getting to the quarterback, which exposes everyone else.
Yeah.
So I think from that perspective, it would suck, yes, if they were to go 9-8 and not make the playoffs. I'm not going to say that it would be a complete failure or I would be upset if they were to make it to the playoffs and upset one of the teams, because one of those teams would be either the Bills or the Chiefs. Yeah. And at that point, I think like they maybe figured something out and they know that they have issues on defense. Like I think that's clear.
Yeah.
They know if they keep the offense the same, it's always going to be a top offense because of Joe Burrow. So I don't know. I'm not going to kill the team if they don't do anything after winning a playoff game at 9-8 in terms of offensively. If they don't do something to change the defense, I'll be pretty upset.
I think Kinner's right if you think the Bengals would make drastic changes if they had a bad record. I don't.
Yeah,
I think if the Bengals went 5-12 this year, Duke Tobin's still the GM, Zach Taylor's still the head coach, Joe Burrow's still they're still not going to invest a ton of money into the team. I don't think the 2 or 3 wins or losses we're debating here swings how the Bengals attack this offseason. Should it? Absolutely. I just don't have faith that it will. So we might as well root to make the playoffs. My point where I switched from playoffs to drafts was after we beat the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Because if you would have lost to the Cowboys, there was a realistic chance you could end the season with 5 or 6 wins, and you're picking top 10. Now, already sitting at 6-8 with, as Elliot said, one of the worst collection of records in the history of the NFL, at least recent history, with all those 3-win teams at the top of the draft. There's just no way the Bengals are going to be able to get an advantageous draft pick. So I'd rather win games. I think that helps long term. if you can't get high enough in the draft order. But I don't think the Bengals are making drastic changes unless Joe Burrow walks in the front office and asks for him. And I don't think a record necessarily determines that. As we saw, he was probably his most frustrated at the coaching staff after a win. So I don't think 9-8 versus 5-12 drastically changes how he attacks this offseason. And I think his mindset and the asks that he has of the front office will be what drives the change.
In fact, Jacob, I think that maybe going 9-8 might have a positive effect because they're going to say, damn, we were that close again.
Yeah.
We didn't improve at all.
You're not wrong.
Like, what are we going to do to improve? If we did all this in the offseason and it didn't change our record at all, we got to do more, right? That would be my mindset, at least. I don't know what the front office is going to think, but if they go 9-8 again and don't make it to the playoffs, you got to change something because nothing changed. So that's my thought on it.
All right, good stuff. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410, Wing AM. In Dayton, happy Friday. We'll step away for a few moments, and we'll take a look at some of the top matchups in the NFL as we head into the weekend, give you a couple picks, and then we'll, of course, give you our predictions for college football playoffs. And then we're going to debut the new Elliot's headline sounder. I'm pretty excited about it. It's a big day.
I still don't believe it's happening, but
we'll believe it.
Still believe it's happening. Yeah, but we'll be right back. We're Off the Bench next. All right, and we are back. John, Elliot, and Jacob Tissett with you here. Casey McAllister in the producer chair. I don't know why I said chair, so weird, but, whatever. Happy Friday. Tonight, top 25 showdown. Cincinnati, the number 19 team in the country, taking on the Dayton Flyers, who number 22. Cincinnati, a 3.5-point favorite, according to our friends over at ESPN Bet. Elliot, is that about the line you expected?
Yeah. It's a home court spread. And
for Dayton?
Funny. I think that, listen, last year was a disaster.
Thanks,
because I wasn't going to laugh at that.
What is it going to be, 80-20 Flyers fans?
It's going to be a lot of Flyers fans.
90-10?
I remember how upset you were last year.
Can we get a 95-5?
It's going to be a lot of Flyers fans.
It's kind of weird that UC moves to a bigger arena just to fit more Flyer fans, as opposed they couldn't control the. I don't know.
Nate says 90-10.
I don't understand why this was not a home and home. I still don't get it. But to each their own. That's what they wanted to do. That's what they got. I think if UC is able to win this game, I'm going to be so bought back in that it's scary. I'm already in. UC has a very good roster, and it's gonna be tested early on in the Big 12 schedule. I think we start off with Kansas State on the road, Arizona at home, Baylor on the road, Kansas at home. That's how we start conference schedule. So you beat Dayton, you take on Grambling State, who's irrelevant. Nobody University.
No, this is dangerous.
We play Nobody University on Sunday, December 22nd.
Got to win by 20.
Gotta win by 20. It might be snowing outside.
But it's important to note, and Doug did not, they play basketball inside.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
The weather doesn't matter.
Anyway,
we did get dug in, Kenner.
If you're able to mostly dominate your non-conference schedule outside of a fluke loss to Villanova on the road, who I don't think is as bad as everybody says they are, if you're able to do that, you don't have to be as good in the conference. You don't have to be, 3 games, 4 games above 500 in the conference. If you're hovering around 500 in the Big 12, you're going to be a tournament team. That's all I want, and that's the goal. That's the mission Wes Miller has set out for the Bearcats this season, and it starts tonight at 8:30 against Dayton. And I think Dayton's a good team. I think they're going to be right around the top 25 all season long based on the conference they play. They're not going to be losing too many games this season after this one. So if you're able to capitalize on this game, a game where you're going to be hungry after last season, then yeah, I'm going to be bought all the way back in. It's going to come down to what can Dan Skillings do. Dan Skillings, a very, very bad game against Xavier. He kind of woke up towards the end a little bit, towards the last 10 minutes or so. He was kind of playing a lot better, but you need Dan Skillings to be good. You need Seamoss to find the shot early. Seamoss is the leading scorer of the Bearcats through the non-conference schedule, which is pretty crazy to me. It's astounding. He's leading the team with 16 points a game. Dylan Mitchell's leading the team with 7.4 rebounds a game. So if we're going to be able to win this game, it's going to be through Dylan Mitchell, Seamoss, and Dan Skillings. I think Jizzle is going to bounce back as well. I don't know how good of a game he's going to have, but he's not going to be 0 for 11 again. You won't see an 0 for 11 Jizzle James the rest of the season. I'd be willing to bet a lot of money on it. But Dayton's good, man. Dayton's got a good roster.
Can I get another Jizzle Ofer at plus 200?
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and look, Dayton, I learn not to pick too much against them in these big games because Anthony Grant usually gets his teams jacked up to play in big games. Top 25 showdowns. That's even. I know you lose to North Carolina, Iowa State, but I mean they look like they belong on the floor with those two teams those nights. And of course, you come out with the win against UConn. You come back from behind double digits at halftime against Marquette on your home floor. They rise up to the occasion to play the good teams. My biggest problem with them is the fact that they always play down to the level of their competition. And so when you said they'll be always in that top 25 conversation throughout the year because the conference they play in, I think that actually works against them because there's not a lot of teams in the A10 that they view as equals, which is ironic because they don't view a lot of teams as equals to them in the conference that they don't dominate. But hey, to each their own, they play down to the level of their opponent. I actually think they're going to pick up some losses that shouldn't be losses when it's all said and done. But tonight, I have no concern about Dayton against Cincinnati. No shot at the Bearcats. But this is what Dayton does. They're going to play up to the level of the competition. They're going to come out, take care of business. It'll be a large Dayton crowd, as we were kind of joking about, but also being serious about. They're going to feed off of that. But yeah, I like Dayton tonight. But can they sustain it? Can they keep it up? The A10 always works against them because you don't get a lot of great opportunities to play teams that are going to keep propping you up. And then, of course, you're vulnerable to playing down to the level of your competition, which is a weakness of Anthony Grant-led teams. So we'll see. But it's about tonight, and I did not think we'd be talking about a top 25 showdown between these two teams when the season started. So it's going to be a good one. But right up against Notre Dame, Indiana tonight, I'll be flipping channels back and forth.
I will be. The last game they played was last year, obviously. 82-68 was the final score. Dayton dominated that game from the jump. It was pretty much over right away. I will say, Deron Holmes, is he, by the way, what team is he on in the NBA? Is
Deron Holmes Denver. He got drafted. Denver. He got drafted by the Nuggets in the first round, and then unfortunately, in the summer league game, ripped it. So it's unfortunate. But I'm not saying it's a good thing to get an injury, but to have that injury in preseason, in really summer league, I'd rather get that injury there. It stinks you get that type of injury like in December, January, because that puts you out a calendar year to the next year. So hopefully he's back early for next year.
Deron Holmes and Kobe Elvis, they combined for almost 60 points. So they combined for, what is that? That's 55 of their 82 points last season in that win. The Bearcats struggled from the field. I think they shot 35%. Seamoss was the leading scorer with 14. The team is way better. And the Bearcats are just significantly better than that roster. John Newman went 1 for 7 from that game. Victor Locken 2 for 9. And I think Victor Locken got benched at some point during that game. Day Thomas 5 for 13. You just have more scorers this year with the Bearcats than you had a year ago. So I think the Bearcats are going to win this game. I think they're the better team, but it just comes down to playing at Heritage Bank against the top 25 team. It worries me. It worries me that Jacob's going to be right again. It's going to be 90% Dayton fans at Heritage Bank. I unfortunately will not be there. It sucks, but I already made plans.
Sold out. Couldn't get tickets. Flyer fans bottom up.
No, I could have bought tickets, but I didn't. So we'll see what happens. I'm very excited though.
Yeah, you mentioned, Kobe Elvis and Deron Holmes last year. You talk about how Cincinnati, their roster completely better this year than last year. Dayton's roster is less talented than last year, but they're a better team this year. Like, you look back, the fact that you had Tumani Kamara, who's playing for the Portland Trailblazers, Deron Holmes in the NBA, Elvis looks like a star. I mean, a huge player at Kentucky right now. I mean, he's one of their best players at Kentucky. The fact that you had all those guys on the roster and really couldn't do anything and nothing to really show for it is just insane. But when you're less focused on trying to feed stars the ball and just play basketball, you get better team basketball. That's what Anthony Grant's got out of this Flyer group so far. But I think tonight will be good. 3.5 points was the line. UC favored by 3.5.
I take the Bearcats.
Fair enough. All right, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Let's go. We'll transition back to the NFL a little bit, do a couple picks for some of the big games this upcoming weekend. I tell you what, you go across the board. By the way, we're talking about the win totals for teams a little bit ago. And like you said, oh, man, if the Bengals are that 4 to 5 win team, you get like a top 10 draft pick. That's what's wild. The Browns have their 3 wins right now, and they're barely holding on to a top 10 pick in the draft. Like, that's how bad the NFL is this year. I think we talked about the other day, basically saying that's why at this point you don't really care about the draft, because at 6 wins, that should still be enough to get you a top draft pick, and it's not. So might as well just try to win out and try to do your best to make the playoffs at that point. But, yeah, I can't believe how bad the bottom of the league is this year in that regards. And that's why there's not a lot of good games this weekend either. There's not a lot of big games this weekend.
Yeah, 2 2-win teams, 6 3-win teams, 2 4-win teams. That's abysmal football. I mean, that's just absolutely terrible. And then the New Orleans Saints rounding out the top 10 at 5-9. There's not a whole lot of NFC teams in there either. We were just talking about the conference debacle in that top 10. Chicago, New Orleans, Carolina, and the Giants, the only NFC teams. The rest of the top 10, all AFC teams. So the bottom of the AFC, certainly very, very weak. But obviously picking in the top half of the draft, maybe they're going to have a nice infusion of talent this year, and we won't be seeing these teams down there again. So it's crazy how, volatile success in the NFL is. Teams picking high in this draft probably won't be next year. So maybe it's another flip of the conference supremacy.
Yeah, bad week of matchups. I mean, we're talking Cardinals and Panthers.
But the NFL never gives you a stinker.
Yeah, well, Vikings, Seahawks, that's intriguing. That one won't be terrible. Patriots, Bills, not interested there. Jaguars, Raiders, try and stop me. Niners and Dolphins, not a good one there. Buccaneers and Cowboys. I mean, I'm just not in. Eagles, Commanders, that's good. Outside of Ohio, no one gives a rip about the Bengals and the Browns matchup there. Lions and Bears, horrible. Giants, Falcons, yawn. Steelers, Ravens, Texans, Chiefs. Again, that's the big one coming up on Saturday, both of those.
Christmas is fun, and or I guess it's the Saturday games. It's the same teams that play on Christmas. But the Saturday games are fun. No one's in a soul is going to watch them.
No.
I mean, not a soul is going to watch those games. I wish they would have put them on Sunday. Screw the 4 days rest or whatever. They don't care about player safety anyway. So just play those games on Sunday and give college football their slate. I saw yesterday on PTI, Tony Kornheiser was saying that this is college football coming at the NFL's head, spitting in the face of the biggest league in the United States by scheduling their games on this Saturday.
I mean, so this usually when you get this many bad matchups in a week,
how many sports can the NFL take over? Sorry,
give them a shot. With this many bad matchups, though, there's usually going to be some major upset. I mean, you look across up and down this right now. I mean, could the Patriots upset the Bills are rolling? Could it be the Patriots that knock off the Bills? Buffalo's a 14-point favorite. Doubt that. But again, I don't know. There's not even like any major upset potential in this. Could the Bears, stun the Lions? Have the Lions peaked, by the way? Are the Lions who are battling a lot of injuries now? Could the Bears and Caleb Williams all of a sudden maybe they're at home? They got the Lions.
Bears are really bad. Bears are so bad that it's honestly, you talk about teams that are worthless organizations. I don't know how those fans get up every day because they have nothing forever. They do have a Super Bowl somehow. They have a Super Bowl, but Boy, it's bad. The Lions will not lose to the Chicago Bears. I would bet everything in my savings account on it.
Yeah, I already hammered the Bears plus 7.5. I think they easily cover and potentially win the game. Cable's playing out of his mind so far, still not turning the ball over. He's playing good ball since the last couple of weeks. So I'm certainly on.
Good ball. He misses wide receivers.
He's the best rookie quarterback in the last 5 weeks.
He misses wide receivers by 50 yards.
This is the best statistical quarterback season in Bears history.
Well, yeah, but their best quarterback's Jay Cutler. So it's like
he's a rookie, and he's the best quarterback they've ever had. I think that's a pretty successful season. Second best rookie quarterback statistically so far this year behind Bo Nix.
The grass on that hill that you're dying on has to be super comfortable to lay in.
It's great.
I appreciate it.
Great.
He's fighting all the way to the end, and I appreciate it.
I love Caleb, man. He's shown me everything I wanted to see this year.
The Commanders in the NFC, obviously Texans in the AFC, they both remind me of one another. They're just two. You look at their win totals, you're like, man, they're winning a lot of games, but they're just two dry franchises right now. They're just kind of stale. There's not a lot about either that I'm super excited about. Which one of those but which one's going to do more in their playoff when the playoffs get here, do you think?
I don't know.
Like, they're both stale. They're both.
That's what I
there's
mean.
Nothing about them. But you look at them. The Commanders 9-5.
I think the Commanders. I think the Texans are.
Neither of those teams move me at all when it comes to the playoffs. At all.
I think the Commanders have a better chance to win.
I don't think so, just because of the NFC schedule.
I don't know. The Texans' whole offense depends on Joe Mixon.
Correct. So
if Joe Mixon starts the game out with like 6 carries for 25 yards, they're done. You know it's over. Or 6 carries for 18 yards. You know it's over. It's just done. The Commanders, at least to me, have some sort of fight in them at the end of the game. No matter whether or not they're winning, losing, playing bad, playing good, doesn't matter. They're at least somewhat there. Like I trust JD to at least throw the ball to Terry McLaurin when it matters most.
Yeah.
I don't trust CJ Stroud this season to get it done.
I would comfortably bet against both those teams in their current playoff matchups. As of right now, the Commanders would be going to Los Angeles to play the Rams.
Yeah.
I think the Rams would run them out of that stadium in the playoffs. I just think Stafford is such a polished quarterback when it comes to that time of the year. And then in the AFC, the AFC North team that doesn't win the division, Ravens or Steelers, is going to go to Houston. And I think we would all agree that AFC North team would probably take care of the Texans relatively easily. I know there's a level of concern with that Ravens defense. Maybe Joe Mixon can have a really good day and the Texans can control that game. But I would still certainly take Lamar over CJ and the Texans in that one. So, yeah, I don't think either of these teams are going to pick up a playoff win. The only chance in my mind, and I guess that goes back to the point where Elliot is right about the Commanders having a better shot, because who knows what happens in the NFC West. If the Cardinals or the Seahawks somehow win that division, then, yeah, that changes my mindset on whether or not they can win that first-round game. But neither of those teams are going to make a run in the playoffs, I don't think, by any means.
The Texans, nobody's talked about the Texans all season long. They have how many wins? They have 10 wins already?
Yeah, and they clinched the South. 9-5 clinched the South.
Like, nobody talks about them, but maybe they're better than we all give them credit for. I just don't think so. Like, they've done their job. They take care of the trash in the AFC. And outside of that, they don't really do too much else. C.J. Stroud, and I know they lost Stephon Diggs early on, and you've battled injuries all season long too, with Nico Collins going down. Joe Mixon's been out a couple games, so you've had those instances where they haven't been a complete team. But I think we've seen enough of them to know what they are, and who they are is just not very good.
Yeah, C.J. Stroud. He's thrown for 3,200 yards, 17 touchdowns, 9 picks, completing about 64% of his passes. They just haven't taken that big step that we thought. I mean, even with losing Stephon Diggs, I mean, you still were a prolific offense last year with Nico and those guys, and you still have them. So that I was surprised about that. Joe Mixon, 910 yards up to this point with 3 weeks to go, so he's going to get to that 1,000-yard total as well. Have you guys thought about how good you would be if you would have kept him? I don't think that's ever been talked about. Have you ever considered that? Like,
Jesse Bates also ends every game with a big clutch interception. That's very funny, too.
That was I knew people were going to talk about that. That was the dumbest play of all time. To catch that ball. You have to knock that ball down.
It was. Joe Mixon, good for him, man. Good for him. Is he over 1,000 yards this year?
He is. He is.
The Houston Texans, I feel like, and I'm looking at their schedule right now, they barely.
Totally.
I can tell y'all don't listen.
They barely beat the Jaguars. They barely beat the Colts. They barely beat the Jaguars again. You lose to the Titans. You barely beat the Bills. You'll get blown out by the Vikings. Barely beat the Bears. Barely beat the Colts. It just seems like they haven't been. It's like, I mean, they've had a couple big blowout wins, so I'll give them a little bit of credit. But I just seems like they haven't been there. I feel like their fans would be disappointed. I'm not a Houston Texans fan, so I don't know. I feel like their fans would be disappointed in the season that they've had.
Yeah, I think the expectations on CJ and the Texans as a whole were too high going into this year. I think this was a team that kind of scraped by in a weak division last year, and you thought that the quarterback just never takes a step back in the NFL. The NFL's hard. And you're going to struggle at some point when other teams get film on you, and that's what we're seeing with CJ this year. He's going to be fine. He's going to be an elite NFL quarterback for a long, long time. It's a sophomore slump, and until very, very recently, that was just a thing that happened, and it was okay for you to struggle in your first couple of years in the league.
Yeah.
And now it's not. Now it's, is there serious problems with C.J. Stroud? Are the Texans no longer contenders? No, he's just struggling in his first 20 or so NFL starts.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science to why stuff like that happens. And I don't know. I think a lot of people are flipping on the Texans a little bit more than they should. I also think a lot of people got too far in on the Texans too quickly.
All right, this is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. We'll step away for a few moments, and we're going to pivot because we do, Elliot, we do have the new headliner, or the new headliner sound.
Wow.
We do, yeah.
Wow.
Christmas miracle is what the kids on the streets call it. So we'll step away for a few moments, and then we'll do what we do.
Like Christmas.
In fact, to make it seem like we did this on purpose.
Everywhere you go.
Off the Bench next. All right, final segment on the radio side. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Happy Friday. We've talked a lot of college football, a lot of NFL, a lot of Bengals. And there's all this other stuff in sports that we just don't know what to do with. So that's why we cram it all into a segment we like to call It's Headlines. And we usually kick off the show with it, but, we're pivoting now. We're going to do what we do each and every day, and that's close out the show with Elliot's Headlines. Maybe we pivot and do that moving forward.
I like
that. Let's test it out. Let's test it out. Let's see how it sounds. Let's see how it flows and vibes, and see how the people like it and appreciate it, because you can't have headlines without a sounder. Apparently, this has been a very big deal, but we finally got it done. So let's go ahead. Let's set them up. Ladies and gentlemen, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Let's wrap it up on the radio side with Elliot's Headlines.
Score updates, breaking news, local and national headlines. Whatever's going on in the world of sports, Elliot has you covered. Off the Bench brings you Elliot's Headlines.
Wow.
Hey, that's tough.
Wow.
I like that a lot.
I like that whistle.
I like that a lot.
I like the whistle.
That's big
I
time.
really like that whistle. Tweet. Headlines.
I'm going to get a whistle, and you're going to have more whistles during your headline segment now. I'm just going to blow it after every score. Tweet. Yes. Yeah, I'm going to bring a whistle. I'm going to bring a whistle on Monday.
Chargers beat the Broncos 34-27 if you missed it. Herbert, 284 yards, 2 touchdowns with a terrible interception right before the half. But also right before the half, the Broncos elected to throw the ball with like 30 seconds. So Harbaugh called a timeout with 8 seconds. They punted the ball away. And what happens? Chargers go for a fair catch. Broncos deck him. Fair catch interference. They get an untimed free kick at midfield. A 57-yard kick for Cameron Dicker. He sinks it. It's the first time we've had a it's the first time we've had a free catch free kick.
Fair catch free kick.
What did I say?
Free catch free kick.
Fair catch
free kick.
In 48 years. It's the first time that's happened. So we all witnessed history last night. He drilled it. It ended up being a pretty big turning point in that game, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
For the Chargers. McConkey, 6 for 87. He led Chargers receivers. Bo Nix, solid, 29 for 40, 263 yards.
This Super Bowl DVD being the muffed punt recovery against the Cowboys, fair catch free kick for the Chargers.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great lead-off to the Super Bowl DVD. This Bengals run is historic.
I'm going to be honest. I get in on the NFL a lot, bad officiating, stuff like that. it is objectively cool that they have hidden rules like this. Because they've talked about this before.
I was screaming in the bar, kick it, kick it, kick it.
Is this the only way you get that kick? Is it if it's on a fair catch?
Fair catch at any point in time in any game. It doesn't have to be the end of a half. You can kick a field goal from where you fair caught it, whenever.
That's insane.
You would never do that because what would you need? You would need a really bad punt.
Yeah.
But it has to stay in bounds because if it goes out of bounds, you can't fair catch it. You probably need a penalty to get into field goal range, and the only way you'd ever give up a possession is if the clock's already at 0.
So So you're saying that even if you fair catch it without
if you fair caught it at the 5 with 15 minutes left in the first quarter, you could do that
without a penalty.
You could do it whenever, wherever.
So it doesn't matter if I thought it had to be with the penalty.
After a fair catch, you can kick a free kick wherever at any point in time in the game.
That rule rocks.
The penalty is semi-required because it's the only way you can get into field goal range. Because think about it, even a bad punt from your own goal line gets you to what, the opposite 40? So you're a 66-yard field goal or so. They hit a 57-yarder after the 15-yard penalty.
And most coaches would obviously want to get closer as you can, so they wouldn't do it.
If you have any time, you run a play.
Zach Taylor would have taken it.
Probably. He would have ran it up the gut once for good measure.
You're right. McPherson range. College basketball, we already talked about it. 22nd ranked Dayton, 19th ranked Cincinnati. Tonight, 8:30, Heritage Bank Center. That'll be televised on ESPNU. Somehow this one gets on TV. Crosstown Shootout does not. NBA news. Trailblazers. Anthony Simons hit a buzzer beater to beat the Nuggets 126-124. The Lakers, they take care of the Kings 113-100. LeBron with 19, 6, and 7. He breaks the all-time minutes record in the NBA. Just another record. LeBron, what record doesn't he have at this point? Are there any that he does he have rebounding?
No.
Some might say a record.
He's going to get high up there.
Is he close in assists?
He's top 10. Top 5, maybe.
He'll break them all. But LeBron James broke the all-time minutes record last night. Karl Anthony Towns, he received a standing ovation in his return to Minnesota. The Knicks destroy the Timberwolves 133-107. Spurs beat the Hawks 133-126. Victor Wembanyama scored his second highest point total of the season with 42. And the Grizzlies, they destroyed the Warriors by 50, 144-93. That one, that's a tough game there. Major League Baseball, Sammy Sosa and the Cubs have appeared to reconcile. Sosa released a statement last night apologizing, apparently, for steroids and for whatever he did wrong during his time with the Chicago Cubs. But he's appeared to be on pace to make the Chicago Cubs Hall of Fame, and everything's all right in the world now in Chicago. So good for Sammy Sosa. I'm on the belief that the steroid era helped baseball. I don't think guys like that should have to apologize for making the game better and keeping the sport alive. So if Sammy Sosa felt that he had the need to do that, I would say you owe nobody anything, Sammy. So, but nonetheless, he did it, and Cubs and Sosa are back in with each other.
What did he say? What was it, a year or two ago when the reporter asked him about steroids? I can't believe you'd ask me that question.
Yeah.
And now he apologizes publicly.
Well,
Two things could be true.
Change of heart.
Two things could be true. He did steroids and still can't believe that you asked him about it.
Yeah,
You're
right. You're right.
Technically. Look, Sammy Sosa, man, that was, him and so my two favorite players is random. My two favorite players growing up, just because so many of my friends too, everyone wanted to have at bats like him, do the Sammy hop after. But Gary Sheffield was my second favorite. Both accused of steroids, by the way. I think both used steroids. But hey, that's besides the point. But the Sammy hop and then the Gary Sheffield stance where he just continued to wave the bat back and forth. Sammy and Gary Sheffield were two of my favorites growing up just because of kind of some of the quirks they had when they were in the batter's box or whatever. I don't give a rip about the steroids thing. The fact that he apologized, I think it's just one of those where you've been out of the game long enough now. You're probably getting older. And, you want to be you want to kind of reconcile that relationship a little bit and be, honored for, the good that you brought to the table during his time in Chicago. So do I think he needed to apologize? Absolutely not. I don't think he should have apologized. But if that's if you have to play the game, to kiss the ring, to get into their ring of honor, whatever the hell they call it over there, they're just the Cubs Hall of Fame. Congrats to him, because Sammy was too big a part of their history, even though they didn't win a World Series with him, too big a part of their history to not to just totally act like he never existed within their timeline. So I'm glad to see that he's going to get honored for that.
I think all those guys should be eligible for the Hall of Fame.
I agree.
I think their stats are legitimate. I don't give a damn about the steroids. They save baseball. And that's all there is to it. Other scores from last night. Somebody, I think it was that one guy, told me to look it up. Apparently, the women's volleyball, college volleyball, the tournament's underway. The semifinals were last night.
Great match.
Penn State beat Nebraska 3-2 in their match, and Louisville, they advanced to the championship as well. They beat Pittsburgh 3-1 in their match.
They had that game on ordeal
competition
in between the two Thursday Night Football TVs at the bar I was at. So
okay.
I caught a glimpse. That's my analysis.
I had a buddy bet on it last night.
Very nice.
I had a buddy bet on it. Like, he won both. So
we got big Bengals news as well. Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins is in uniform and at practice today, working with trainers on the side. Expect a limited designation for him. He did not practice yesterday with non-injury related and knee injury designation. So I don't know how you have both of those, but that's what it was. And now he's back out there on the extra fields, which has been the norm in recent weeks as he readies to go for the game. So he should play this weekend, which obviously is a big deal for everyone.
And there you go. All right, off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. That was Elliot's headline. So do you approve? We good?
Good.
We have some
that was good.
Forward? Okay. I do want you to bring the whistle in, Jake.
I will.
I
will have a whistle Monday.
So Elliot, when you're done with the headline or
just
a score, he blows the whistle and just keep going.
We're going to terrify those poor people in Dayton.
I think the people in headlines are going to really enjoy the whistle.
I think the radio listeners are going to really enjoy the whistle.
When they're driving off the road. Yeah, that'd be tough.
Driving home, it's icy roads, it's the winter time. Tweet!
Yeah, if you're listening on the radio, drive safely today.
Drive safely. Absolutely.
Maybe I'll just get a button for him to press so it's
No,
not.
I think it's going to be a whistle.
It has to be a whistle.
I think it's going to be a whistle.
All right, well, that wraps it up for us on the radio side. We'll talk a little college football coming up. We'll get your pick on the Browns-Bengals matchup this weekend. Gee, I wonder who you're going to pick. We'll get to that. The Yankees have been mentioned. This just came out a little bit ago, according to Ken Rosenthal. The Yankees have been mentioned in trade talks for a potential all-star first baseman. We'll talk about that more when we come back on the YouTube side. But until next week, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers on 1410 ESPN Radio.
We gotta bring
the Guardians are looking to move on from what?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. What do you want to do?
No, I was good.
The weather report? I think is a good week to do that, to be honest.
I was going to say, AJ wanted me to do the weather report.
Snow.
But I have to go outside to do that, and I don't know if I've got it in me. If it's snowing on Monday, I'll have a weather report. That's a promise.
On Monday you'll give us the weather report for the playoffs this weekend?
Sure. That's what I'll do.
Sounds like a plan. No, the Yankees are interested in landing Guardians first baseman Josh Naylor. Still trying to figure out where the Guardians, who don't spend any money, can't afford to pay any of their good players. They had more All-Stars on their roster than anybody last year, and somehow still just moving on from some of these guys because they can't afford them. Doesn't make any sense to me. But if I'm a Guardians fan, I'd be pissed about this. It's not like I'm locked in. Maybe there's a good reason, a justifiable reason. Maybe they have a good first base prospect coming up, and then he's in the way, and it just makes sense. I doubt it. Cheap organization. By the way, we do Reds Fest every year. The only reason we didn't do Reds Fest this year is because the renovations to Duke Energy Convention Center. The Guardians try to come out with this old bullshit little excuse about that, why they're not going to do their fan fest. They're going to do their fan fest once every 3 years so that they can make it the most memorable experience possible for the Guardians fans. So 3 years to plan one event because, they're cheap. I can't stand the Guardians organization. Maybe some of it's jealousy that they don't do anything and they still produce good players and win baseball games. Maybe some of that lives deep inside me, but I have no clue why you would be looking to move on from Josh Naylor. And it's not just Naylor. I mean, the Reds were in on him and some of the other players on that Guardians team too. I have no clue why the Guardians are looking to move on from guys instead of adding guys at this point.
Yeah, I'll say this. The Cleveland Guardians, I'll give them credit for winning games somehow. But that organization, man, why would any player want to be there? Why would any player want to go play for Cleveland?
Because they'll give you like a third of your market value to stay forever.
Yeah,
Perks of the job. Yeah. Perks of the job.
What's their biggest contract? Is Jose Ramirez their biggest contract ever in franchise history?
I believe so. In fact, I'm going to look for this. I just saw a graphic the other day that broke down like the biggest contract.
7-year, 141. Jose Ramirez, biggest contract in Guardians history.
What was Votto's?
Like what?
It was 14.
225.
225.
225.
Yeah, 220 something.
Yeah, I the Guardians are a team to me. It's just like they'll never win a World Series. They're going to compete, and that's a credit to their organization. They're able to win games without spending money. It's just not a destination that I think people want to go to. I don't know. How do they do in attendance every year? Do they do well in attendance? Because
I don't think so.
The Reds.
Go
ahead.
My bad. Keep going. No, my bad. I'm bad at that. My bad. Keep going.
The Reds finish bottom 10 seemingly every year in attendance. I don't know too much about the Guardians' attendance, but maybe that's a reason people want to go, or players want to go there. Maybe they've got a strong fan base and they show up every single night. But I don't think so. I'd imagine they're probably down with the Reds when it comes to attendance. But to each their own.
A few years ago, when they made the playoffs a few years ago, they were near the bottom in attendance. Nobody was going to their games. They were in a playoff race down the stretch. No one was going to their games. And then all of a sudden, the playoffs get there, and they're standing room only. And, the national broadcasts are talking about how loyal the Guardians / Indians fans are, that they stick with their franchise, blah, blah, blah. But they don't go to ball games. They know their team's going to win games. Their team's winning 85 to 90 games, and their fans still don't go to ball games. But, my God, they're standing room only at the playoffs or whatever. But, yeah, that again. I for as big of a Browns fan as I can't stand the Guardians. I don't. It's complete opposite. It drives me nuts. But anyways, by the way, did you see the? We don't care about the Phoenix Suns at all, but the Phoenix Suns announced their new concession prices.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah. So their hot dogs previously were $9. Now they're $2. To get a bottled water at a Phoenix Suns game was $8.50. Now you can get one for $2.
That just shows you how much of inflation is disgusting corporate greed and not needed.
Yep. Correct. An excuse.
The Reds,
right?
The Reds still sell a bottle of water for $5.50. You can go to Kroger's and get that same exact bottle of water, except 40 more of them for $10.
Yeah, pretty much. While we're on somber topics of inflation, I can ruin your guys' day if you want.
Sure.
Yeah, Joe Burrow's not taking snaps today. We're throwing the ball at Bengals practice.
Don't like that.
Standing off on the sideline, helmet on, just watching. He's been limited all week with a knee injury and a wrist injury. Obviously, the wrist's been there on there all year long. If you get any kind of treatment, you have to be on the injury report. So his wrist has been on there all year long, but a knee popped up last week and has been this week. And maybe it's just precautionary, but he's calling plays in the huddle. But Jake Browning is doing all the throwing and all the snaps.
Don't like that. Don't like that one bit.
Maybe he cut his hand on one of them swords he bought his lineman. Maybe, things are dangerous.
Maybe. We got an update on the swords as well. They date back to the 1600s.
No way.
Yeah, real samurai swords, each one of one. And the O-line got to pick theirs. They were laid out in the room. The O-line got to pick their swords.
That's pretty cool.
Who got to pick first, you think?
I think Orlando is what I heard. He was the first one that they talked to about it, so I assumed that meant he came out of the room first, therefore picking first. But I don't know. I assume you go down the totem pole, right?
Karras.
Yeah. You go Orlando, Karras, Mims.
Kappa.
No, I think you just get those. You don't save some
the rest
money. Save some money, Joe.
The rest they get a pocket knife.
I'll give Matt Lee one. I'll give Matt Lee one.
I like
That's
that.
our guy.
Tanner, David Shaw wants me to ask you, who do you hate worse, the Steelers or the Guardians / Indians?
Oh, the Guardians / Indians.
Wow.
Guardians / Indians.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Very, but no, you brought up the Reds $5.50 water a little bit ago. I'm glad that they overcharged for water, because if they didn't do that, then they wouldn't even be in on some of these big names in free agency and trades. Like, they would say, hey, we can't even afford to even entertain the idea of having them on this roster. So, it's a sacrifice. We have to overpay for water to be in on some of the top names in baseball.
Is 3-2-1 Tuesdays kneecapping our franchise? It's like a $13 difference when you get to. Oh man,
it might be.
Well, let's be honest. I'll spend $8 on a hot dog if it means we get to keep Ellie De La Cruz for another 15 years.
That is crazy. If they told us that, like if they were up front, and I know no owner will ever be that, but if they were up front, like, hey, so we would really like to bring Ellie back, straight up, we don't have a lot of money, and what we're going to do this year is we're going to have like one section. This is going to be called the Pay Ellie De La Cruz section. And we're going to have $15 bottles of water, $25 gourmet hot dogs. If you want a steak, we'll cook one up. It'll be Jeff Ruby's. It'll be $3,000. You can have one at the game. And we'll just have a whole section where you can buy things at overpriced values so we can then pay Ellie De La Cruz. The other alternative to that would be they would just be good owners and spend money. But we know that one's not going to happen. So we'll probably, if we had the extra Ellie section, that's what I would like.
I still wouldn't mind the idea and by the way, it's pathetic and it's sad and it shouldn't come down to that stuff, but it's a joke, but it's kind of not. But like I'm all for the Reds coming out and starting a collective, just like Ohio State, just like these college football programs. Come out with an LA De La Cruz collective, instead of the split the pot that the QR code for the split the pot at the ballpark.
Nobody's ever won split the pot.
Yeah, so put the QR code. Yeah, if we're going to just give our money away for no reason, might as well have the QR code at the top, and then between every couple innings, it's the LA Collective, and scan the QR code to donate now towards the LA De La Cruz Contract Collective, and let's help keep them in Cincinnati long term. I'm all for it. If we're going to just give our money away for no reason, we might as well give it to keep a superstar in Cincinnati. Let's do that.
I would do it in a heartbeat. Why not? Let us Venmo the team. Just give us your Venmo. I'll Venmo you $10. If we all Venmo $10, you got to be close.
I mean, that's what college football is.
Yeah,
like the joke about crowdfunding for stars. That we did that in a real sport.
So let's do it. It's no big deal. Let's just do it.
What's the betting line for Ellie De La Cruz related fan giveaways in the next 4 years that he's a Red?
We talked about 3 this year already.
3 this year.
Yeah.
And if he wins an MVP, it's 6, double digits 9, in a season.
It would be like we're getting like to 6 a year.
We're getting like 40.
Yeah.
We get lanyards. We'd get posters.
Yeah.
Bobbleheads. Some kind of like Ellie De La Cruz MVP bowling shirt night at Great American Ballpark.
We'd get a jersey and a see-through button-down jersey.
Every month, a calendar. Every month is a home run that he hit this year.
That's right.
So we could do that.
Yeah, I think we're going to get up there. I think we're going to get up there.
Over, under, more. Okay, let me think about this. How I'm going to word this. More playoff victories,
or Ellie De La Cruz related giveaways,
in the next 10 years.
Not even close giveaways.
Yeah,
we'd have to win like 3 World Series to get to the number I'm thinking of. Like, there's no way.
I agree.
They're legitimately gonna bottom out, like absolute floor baseline 5 Ellie De La Cruz related giveaways after this year.
Can you imagine like the next Reds World Series, and hopefully it's in our lifetime. But whenever they win a World Series, the next 3 decades of promotions is already set. I mean, from just World Series, they're still Big Red Machine. I don't have the graphic in front of me, but there's still Big Red Machine promotions this year. I thought that had kind of watered down a bit. No, they're still finding a way. The Big Red Machine.
It's the 50th anniversary, I think, this year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well that would make sense then. That would make sense.
It's the 50th anniversary of the Big Red Machine. So this year it makes sense.
Not to say that they haven't done it for the last 49 years.
Correct.
Yeah, the point still stands for sure. Alex Wallace saying that the switch hitter bobblehead is actually 2 different bobbleheads, which brings us to 4 Ellie De La Cruz related giveaways this year.
I love that.
I was really hoping it was one bobblehead and he was in both batters boxes.
That would be good.
That would have been a fun bobblehead.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, this one right here. I mean, they got to the point they were putting 3 bobbleheads into one. I mean, here's Votto, Casey, Perez right here. I mean, this is a nice one.
That's good. Yeah. I really, really hope. I'm holding on to the hope that Hunter Green's dog's head also bobbles on the Hunter Green and dog bobblehead. If we get 2 bobbles on that one, it might get me to wait in line.
I like the scooter on the scooter one we talked about. Not bad. When he had 5 hits, 17 total bases, 4 home runs, and 10 RBIs on June 6th of 17, that's what this bobblehead was commemorating. How about that?
Pretty cool.
This one's interesting. The heater for the Dayton Dragons, there's that. You opened it up. Good. It's a little creepy thing. Oh, look, there's more.
Oh, wow.
That's good stuff.
Oh, wow.
I don't even know what
the gift that keeps on giving.
What are those called? Those are called Russian dolls or something?
Russian nesting dolls.
Nesting dolls.
Oh, shit. Oh, there we go. Let's put that away before I break it. Broken a few before. By the way, how much do you think Joe Burrow spent on those swords? Did it put in there how much he spent on his offensive line? Did he get anything for his defense?
Probably not.
Wonder what he got Evan McPherson. Did he get,
Cole.
So
I'm
Joe
Googling
Burrow's
right now.
like, if I ever made as much money as Joe Burrow, it sounds like he spends money the way that I would if I ever became loaded like that. Like, he just buys Batmobiles.
Have
He
we
just
thought
buys,
about
like,
the
samurai
possibility that
swords?
he buys the Bengals?
I think it could be like $25,000. These swords.
Put your $575 million on red. Hit. $1 billion. Buy the Bengals.
Yeah.
Then you control player personnel.
That's what I would do.
The Batmobile, the swords, the supermodel he bought that lives at his house, I guess. I'm not really sure what that was about. But
Employee.
She's employee number one. She's employee number one.
So
in charge
he
of security
spends money.
personnel.
He has no one advising him on his finances. That's the way it sounds like he spends money.
I imagine he has somebody advising him on his finances.
I would advise him to pay her to stay at his house.
The issue is,
why do you got to get that defensive? Like, why are we to the point where you're getting that? Hold on, Kenner. Stop. First
about
of all,
what?
stop.
You don't think this guy has somebody watching his
advises
finances?
him.
Every millionaire since the beginning of time has someone watching their finances. He makes $55 million a year. I think he's able to.
It's okay. It's a joke.
Kenner,
we don't really need
Kenner,
to. It's okay.
Kenner,
You don't have
Kenner.
to defend him.
I'm
I
not.
mean, my
even
gosh.
defending him.
No,
I'm
this
not-
is crazy to get worked up about.
I'm not even getting worked up about it. I just all I said was that
financial
somebody's.
advisor.
Okay, all right. Nobody's watching his money. He makes $55 million a year.
We all are. We're watching it go to a Batmobile, a
That's right.
supermodel, samurai swords. It's jealousy. I don't have that money. It's jealousy. No need to, But no, he appreciates that you defended him, and he's like, "Oh, thank goodness, Elliot did defend me. I do have a financial advisor." I do not. I don't make enough money. I'm not in that tax bracket that I need someone telling me how to spend my money. They would just look at it and say, "Where is your money?" I don't have money to spend. So there you go.
Boo you. It's 37%.
Anything else?
Casey?
Yep. 37%.
So it says 37%. The Cincinnati Bengals.
That's if they went out.
That's if they went out.
Yeah.
So 37.
As of right now.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
Big time. I'm as optimistic as I've been in months.
So if you
If the Titans, if the Titans beat the Colts and the Niners beat the Dolphins, then we are at a 58% chance after
that's
this weekend.
insanity.
Bengals win, Niners win, Titans win.
Because then
58% chance.
Then it literally just comes down to Week 18 against the
Well,
Chiefs.
we'd have to beat the Broncos.
Have to beat the Broncos,
which will be favored in that game. Yeah, it's crazy.
By the way, don't mean to change the subject too much, but MLB Network Radio on Sirius XM just put out a little audio piece. Nick Martinez just jumped on and did an interview with them. Before I tell you what the clip is real quick, because I ain't going to share it, I'll just read what the quote is. But what do you think his role is going to be on opening day? Is he in the rotation on opening day, or is he in the bullpen on opening day? What do you think his desired role is?
He's a bullpen guy.
I hope he's in the bullpen.
We have enough starters. We wouldn't need him to be a starting pitcher on opening day. I don't think so. I mean,
if he's a starter on opening day, then you're doing that because you think you have to with the price tag.
Yes, agree.
Yeah,
and I'm not advocating he should be.
But
yeah, that would be my thinking.
You have Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Andrew Abbott, Brady Singer, and then who's number 5? Who am I forgetting?
Well, it'd be him.
It would be him. It would be the 5th.
And you start Louder down in AAA.
And then Louder's who I'm forgetting. But Louder wouldn't start in AAA after.
I don't think
season,
that's
right?
crazy because he wasn't supposed to be up last year.
But he was good though.
I know, but I don't think it's that psychotic to start the year with Nick Martinez in your rotation and just make sure Louder gets his feet wet in AAA again. If he's tearing it up in 2 starts, bring him up right away. Move Martinez to the bullpen, but I don't think that's terrible. I would certainly prefer Martinez in the bullpen and Louder to just start up.
Yeah, it caught my attention, this quote, just because. So he did the media hit earlier, and it says he says going into camp, he goes, "I'm going to go into camp as a full starter, ready to build my innings." And again, is this Terry Francona saying that? Is this the front office saying that that's what he is? I mean, this is him saying that. Nonetheless, I remember in the past, like when Tyler Stevenson used to be asked about, the possibility of transitioning to first base, he was adamant, "I will not transition to first base. I'm a catcher." He was not for that. So we've seen players kind of speak out like on what they think their role should be or will be. But I mean, Nick Martinez coming out saying he's going to be a starter right off the bat. I mean, then that's the rotation, as you guys talked about. We just assumed Rhett Lauder would be there to start. But like Jacob said, I remember last year when we were, there was nothing to be excited about with the Reds. But when Rhett Lauder, it was announced that he was going to be called up, I was the only one not excited about it because although there was a successful string of debuts for Reds rookies in recent years, those guys all debuted according to plan. They all debuted according to the desired timeline that they thought that they were ready to do. Rhett Lauder had to be thrown out into the fire last year in September because they literally had nobody else to pitch. They had nobody else to go to. So he was kind of called upon prematurely, but he was lights out. He had a fantastic September. So maybe it's one of those like, hey, we don't just want to assume he's going to pick up where he left off. Let's kind of ease him into the season. But Rhett Lauder most likely will be on that Reds team at some point in 25. But
to end the show, Kinner, 8 p.m. Indiana Notre Dame. Notre Dame 6.5-point favorite at home. Who you got?
I'm going to go with Indiana. I'm going to do it. I'm just going to say it. The Cignetti storyline, it's been a fun year. The fan base for Indiana drove me nuts a little bit as, we got to through that Ohio State game. I think they got humbled a bit, but I do think they could pass the football. They're better than Northern Illinois, and we saw, Notre Dame lose to them. It's unlikely that crowd's going to be lights out. I mean, it's going to be under the lights. It's going to be just a big-time, prime-time atmosphere. I still just like Indiana. I'm going to roll with Indiana. I'm going to say that they're going to shock the world. They're going to kick off the 2024 college football playoffs, 12-team playoff with the big upsets that I and a lot of people did not think were going to be a part of this field. I think we kick it off with an upset tonight. I'm going to go ahead and be dumb and pick Indiana. Why not? Why not?
It would be their first notable win of the season. It's not going to happen tonight. Notre Dame, I'm going to take him with a touchdown with ease. Jacob.
Yeah, I took him minus 13 during the show. So, Smart. Yeah, I bought it up. I think Notre Dame's going to stomp Indiana. We saw Indiana play Ohio State, and we asked Luke Brenneman about it. He said it was the mistakes that they made that they didn't make against other teams. I saw the same thing. Obviously, they didn't make those mistakes against other teams, but do you think that maybe those mistakes were caused because they were finally outmatched by talent? And I think you're going to see the same thing happen tonight. A lot of those guys just aren't going to know what hits them when they go up against a team with more talent than they have. I think Notre Dame takes care of business relatively easily. And I really think the home teams kind of cruise in this first round. I would be surprised with upsets really in any game.
Casey, who'd you pick yesterday?
Marcus Freeman.
For the Notre Dame game?
Yeah.
I picked Notre Dame.
All right.
Marcus Freeman's just a wild card to me, just because that narrative of not winning big games. Is Indiana considered are they up there with the big game type of team? I don't know, but the situation at hand is what I'm nervous about for Marcus Freeman. Maybe not so much the team they're playing, but the situation at hand. Notre Dame has a history of falling flat in these types of games, regardless of who the opponent is. That's why I'm a little skeptical. But they should win. They should take care of business against Indiana, but I'm going to roll with Indiana in this one.
I know I just said I took Notre Dame. I think they're going to win by multiple scores. If I get through all of this and we get to kick off tonight and I still haven't talked myself into another upset, I'm probably going to take Indiana.
Money line?
Yeah.
Money line or
money line?
Okay.
Because I don't think all the favorites are going to win. That's just not how sports works. It's not. Especially with these spreads being this big. They're all touchdown spreads, double digits in Texas's case. All those teams are not going to win. I think the most likely upset on paper is probably Tennessee over Ohio State. I can't bring my heart to bet that. So I would bet Indiana if I had to without talking myself into another upset.
Rapid fire. Kinner, rapid fire. SMU, Penn State, at Penn State, minus 8.5.
God, I'm very hesitant, but Penn State. And it's not because I think SMU is better, and that's why I'm hesitant. It's the same thing with Marcus Freeman, with James Franklin. Yeah. I don't trust him, but Penn State should beat SMU. This should not be a close game.
I imagine all three of us are taking Penn State.
Clemson's dog water, and they just beat SMU.
Yeah. So, all right. Clemson, Texas. Texas minus 12, rapid fire. I'm going to go Clemson here. I think Clemson sucks, but that seems like a trap game.
It's too many points. I'll take Clemson plus the 12, but I do think Texas wins, and I think they win relatively convincingly.
Yep.
I think that I like Clemson's quarterback. I like their offense. defense for Texas. No one's doubting that or questioning that. But if it's an ugly, sloppy game, what I could see happening is if the offense for Texas is ugly and just sets a negative tone early on, and there's angst in that stadium, I could see Clemson keeping it close. Dabo's still a good coach. I know people are out on him.
He is.
I just think that he could have his guys prepared for a big game like this. It's an upset for a reason. They're not supposed to win, but I do like Clemson in this one if Quinn Ewers does not play the way he was expected to coming into this season.
Dabo Swinney finally using the portal. Got 2 guys out of the portal. The 2 positions he doesn't need. He has the deepest wide receiver room of freshmen in the country. Got a freshman out of the portal. And 2 starters at edge rusher, true freshmen this year. And he got an edge rusher out of the portal.
How about that?
He's trying to figure it out. He doesn't know what to do yet. Usually you get positions you need. But look, baby steps.
Baby steps. Final game, Tennessee, Ohio State, 7.5. I'm taking Tennessee with the hook. But Ohio State's going to win this game by 1 touchdown. I think they win by 7 points in that game in Columbus.
See, I think that's a bad bet. I think I would either take Ohio State minus 10 or Tennessee money line.
Correct. That's kind of what I would be with that 7.5 point spread. I would never take Ohio State. But
I think Ohio State money line and Ohio State minus 7.5 is the same thing. I think if Tennessee covers that, they win the game. Maybe. Is what I'm arguing. Maybe. Because I think Ohio State is so much better at everything.
You might be right.
If they're going to be in a close game, it's because they're not mentally there and Tennessee's going to win.
You might be right.
So I'm going to take Ohio State because I think they're going to win, and I think 7.5 is basically a money line bet, but it's closer than that would lead you to believe.
Ken?
Couple years ago, Ohio State played Georgia in the semifinal.
Yes.
After losing to Michigan, and everyone kept bringing up the hangover of losing to Michigan, and you got that hangover of losing to Michigan. That's all everyone's focused about. Now you got to play an SEC team in Georgia. If they're not mentally prepared, they can get punched pretty good. And Ohio State went out there, and that actually was one of the best games that they had played all season from an offensive standpoint. Defensively, obviously couldn't get off the field. They were bad, but that was because that was the makeup of that team. I think Ohio State's going to come out ready to play. I think that they're pissed off about that loss against Michigan, but at the same time, you're on your home field. It's at night. You have Tennessee, a very respectable foe coming in, and a chance to erase all the negativity that's just been hovering over their program for the last month, ever since that 4th straight loss to Michigan. Yeah. I'm going to take Ohio State in this one, but my goodness, look out, Ryan Day. If you can't get this done, if you can't win on your home field against a team that you're more talented than and better than, look out. We might. I know everyone says Ryan Day is coming back no matter what. I want to believe that too. I think I believe that. But man, things get really interesting very quick if they do lose to Tennessee on Saturday night.
For sure.
I'm bundling up. I know I'm going to be there. I'm jacked to go. It's going to be a good game, and I'm hoping
it's going to be cold.
Wins.
Down in the
teens. It's going to be chilly.
Josh Heupel is going to look so fat in all his layers. Oh my God, he's the fattest coach in Division I football. I hate him so much.
Real quick, you know what they sometimes do though? They want to make a statement. He's not going to be bundled up. Let's.
Oh yeah, he is. He's soft. He's going to be. Oh, it's too cold in Columbus. I got to put on my jacket.
But sometimes he did have them practicing inside when it was 40 degrees this week, so you never know. But sometimes these coaches want to go out there and show that cold's not a factor. I'm just going to wear just a thin, single layer quarter zip. I'm not going to bundle up. I don't want to show that the cold is impacting us at all. Is he going to go that route and try to be tough, or you think he's going to be parking it up? He's going to look like Casey in the producer chair in the studio.
Yeah, the thing about Josh Heupel, though, is he doesn't need the jackets because he has so much insulation already just built into that gut. So he'll be all right in just a polo and a quarter zip. Probably wouldn't be too cold.
Classic Jacob with the fat shaming. I mean,
Look,
goodness.
He beat Ohio State. He beat Alabama twice. It's not a fun guy.
That's it. Now we're out of here. Now we're out of here.
All right. Until next week, this has been Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Box lunch 12:20-ish.